normal start times. I know this is still a little late for my standards, but I have sort of a 1 hour window. While the game loads, I also wanted to take a quick second and just talk about something that I'm doing differently for this game uh, on YouTube, and then you could let me know if this is something that you would like to see in future episodes. So I can't change the fact that I'm a bit wordy or that I have, like just generally, I think the live format is uh, not necessarily conducive to very good uh, YouTube videos. But I have gotten the feedback that people wanted like playlists. So it's like, I like watching your Stellaris playthrough, either to help people learn or they just sort of liked the way that I went with it. This one I feel a little self-conscious about the species because I don't think it's quite as exciting as some of the other stories that I've come up with, but we'll still, we'll do our best with the material that we've been given. And I guess the big thing for me is that it's not. So this is a fairly good example of feedback that is something I'm willing and able to take on board. So the type of feedback that I'll often get would be, actually it's a little bit like when you give feedback to games. Sometimes you'll hear from people. It's like, this would be a really good idea. Or game developers will hear from people, this would be a really good idea. And I think everybody is on the same page that it would be a really good idea. And it is very much something that is beyond the scope of what is possible. Which I realize, like, if you see it on another YouTube channel, it's, that can sometimes be a tall order. But the question is, how much time does this YouTuber have? Do they hire an editor? Most of the people who I know who do YouTube quite regular actually don't do their own editing. They have hired somebody to do that. And I am neither large enough nor talented enough to really afford to do that. And I'm okay at editing. It's really just a question of my own time. So, the idea is like, well, why don't you just cut down your existing videos into something that people want to watch more? Absolutely. Wonderful idea. And unless I come into some money and find somebody who's willing to sift through the nonsense I put out on a semi-regular basis, I can't do that. Or won't do that, I suppose, is the better line. Because in theory, I just abandon all my other interests and spend the time editing videos. But an example of something which involves a bit of work on my part but seems to be worth it was the idea of saying, it's like, it'd be really nice if we had playlists like your Quilta Simulator videos, or your most recent Quilta Simulator videos. I know the old ones don't have the playlists yet. And this is a fantastic example of something that requires effort on my part, and the reason I have not done it in the past is sort of the same reason that back at the start of my YouTube, I didn't even bother marking them as being Twitch stream exports. I, saw the YouTube channel as a place to host the archives of my VODs because people wanted to watch them and they die after 2 weeks on Twitch. And the viewership sort of seemed to indicate that that was how people were watching them. And of course, now that I'm doing some more specific YouTube things, there are people who specifically like watching me on YouTube. And to my surprise, that does also mean this VOD content. Like, it's people who don't necessarily watch the Twitch stream who do watch these videos on YouTube. And so obviously that involves a shift in my understanding of what people want and what my audience is. And in this particular case here, well, it does involve some effort on my own part because the exports don't let you do playlists. I have to go in and manually change it. There are other, that's also not particularly hard for me to do at upload time because I know the order. Now, the drawback is like, well, why don't you do that for your old videos? Like, because it's as hard for me to navigate my YouTube page as it is for all of you. I try to mark the day in which I did the broadcast. It's not always consistent. There are some things that were suppressed due to copyrighted music, or at least the claim of copyrighted music. I actually make a specific effort not to do that very often on the stream. There have been times where I've wanted to upload an episode and it has not worked, and I find out that it's corrupted, 2 weeks after the fact, so the episode's gone forever. And I'll be honest, there are also some evenings where I'm really not happy with what happened in the channel, or, just I feel like there was a particularly negative interaction that I don't want to immortalize in a VOD, and I am often very reluctant to keep those videos. I think there is sometimes some benefit in keeping yourself accountable for your actions. I try to use that option very lightly. But obviously, especially now, you don't need me to tell you that there can be some very unpleasant experiences on Twitch. And obviously there's a bit of a judgment call in terms of what you want to have put out in the world. Even if it's not necessarily something that you're doing, you don't necessarily want to put that online. So this is just a very long way of saying that this series in particular is a little bit of a pilot program for something that I'm willing to do in future, that I will add sort of ongoing episodes of things to a playlist as I go along. If you find this helpful, I'd love it if you'd let me know. If you have a similar idea, basically, I'm open to any suggestions. I don't necessarily always do it. A really common one, which sounds so silly, is like, you should get an image for YouTube. You'd grow a lot faster if you had that. I actually find that really weird, because I don't understand why having an image would change it if you're enjoying the video you're seeing. It's probably absolutely true, and I just need to think about the right image. I do have somebody who I normally hire to do emote-like things, so I'd like to get them involved, and I know they're very busy. But, those are ones where I'm like, yeah, I should probably get on that. There's reasons why it hasn't happened, but I'll move on. There are ones where it's like, yep, this is a really good idea, and I simply cannot afford to do it. And then there's also ones where I'm like, yeah, that's actually a change that I can do. Obviously, the one change I can't do is you talk too much. Just get on with the game. I try and do a little bit better on YouTube dedicated videos, but if you're seeing a stream, it's live, it's me half podcasting, half playing a game, and some people dig it. If you don't, it's easier to fast forward through a VOD than it is a live broadcast, and I probably am not for you, or at least the VODs are probably not for you. And there's absolutely no hard feelings on that, because I don't watch a lot of Twitch, or I definitely don't watch a lot of VODs of broadcasts. But yeah, I'm sorry, that's like almost 10 minutes of explanation there. But I did want to just say what's up. I'm sure there's going to be some ways in which I can significantly improve, but I thought I'd let you know what's up and how I'm thinking of it, at least. Also, I did not sleep very well last night, so I actually wanted to start at 7 sharp, but I needed the sleep. I slept through my alarm. I'm happy that I didn't sleep later than 7. Like past 8, but if I sound like a little under, that's why. Finally, one last disclosure. We are playing Stellaris Nemesis, which is the latest DLC for the game. There's an announcement about the Lem patch. I want to know if that's going to corrupt this save or not. If it does, we might just start it over again with the same species. But I was given a key for this by the developer, Paradox. Hey, Mad King Brunos! That's right, almost 2 years. Thank you for sharing your Mass Effect photo. I'm sorry I wasn't on... I know Origin pretty much always says that I'm online. The actual likelihood of, so far as I can tell, Origin does a wonderful job of reporting to people when something has happened on my computer to pull it out of sleep mode, because I'm definitely getting messages at times when I don't. I'm not even awake or in the house. So sorry about the sorry for missing you, but that's a very cool looking helmet. I'm glad you're really happy with your physical product. The last physical product I bought, I actually really like the game and I really like the developer, but I was kind of underwhelmed by the package. I probably would have just gotten a good old-fashioned digital edition. So okay, yeah. But yeah, anyways, I'm sorry about the scattered nature of the introduction. So with that in mind, I was talking about the key. I'm obviously grateful that I'm able to continue to do Stellaris from the promotional keys. It's not something I want to take for granted, but for a similar reason, I also think it's really important. Well, I mean, it's not even just because I don't want to take it for granted. It is something you should do, which is disclosing when you've been given a copy for promotional purposes. So I'm obviously an enthusiastic Stellaris fan, but I think a little more importantly, I want you to have the natural opportunity to become a Stellaris fan, as opposed to, I don't know, whatever wiles I employ to get you to buy games that you wouldn't play otherwise. Okay, yeah, I probably was awake if you sent it about an hour ago. That must mean, what would have I been doing? Oh no, that's not strictly true actually. Normally I would have been awake, yes. The day before, so yesterday / the day before, I tried as hard as I could to go to sleep for about 8 hours, between like midnight to 8 or 9. And eventually I just gave up and I went and got some groceries and just kind of went through my day, and I felt really crappy, but I didn't feel sleepy, and then all of a sudden I sort of curled up and went to sleep until about 1 o'clock, and then couldn't go to sleep for the rest of the time, which is why I'm feeling really crummy today. Back on the Stellaris save, indeed I am, Index Gnome. I'm taking forever to get started, as is my way, but how did I try to put you all in? Sleep is super important. It does not come easily to me, but I really try and maintain that. I try not to shirk on my stuff. So if I have a stream, I try to do it. But I really do try and give myself some pretty strict guidelines in terms of making sure I get enough sleep. Anyways, we are playing the Fear Devouring Swarm. We've not yet run into anybody to eat. But I think I believe we've already got a colony ship on its way to take Powder. Yep, 86 days. We are getting near the limits of our Empire sprawl, so I need to be thinking about how I'm going to get that administration cap up. That's going to be not a hard guideline I have for myself, but I do want to see if I can make sure I limit my expansion to areas to something within my admin cap, because that was something I struggled with the last time I played. Yes, sorry. Now I remember the one thing I wanted to check out. There's news of the new LEM patch, and I wanted to see what was going on with that. So, Stellaris team is proud to announce the free LEM update honoring the 100th year anniversary of sci-fi author Stanislaw Lem, which will be released tomorrow, September 14th. You never sleep more than 6 hours? Unless when you had brain surgeries, but I'm not sure I can call that sleep. Good Lord. I hope you are feeling better. Yeah, I mean, I don't get 8 hours. I do my best to try and get it. But yeah, I don't know. I do feel the... So, I've seen the studies. I know that when you don't get enough sleep, there is a horizon where you don't necessarily feel like your performance is down, but, there's measured cognitive decline. And then there's like the really didn't get enough sleep level where like you both feel like crap as well as like just do terribly. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I realize I complain about my job underutilizing me a whole lot, but I do like to be, like, on top of things. So I hate feeling fuzzy. Okay, I don't think there's a way, or maybe I can bring this up in browser. So it does look like there's some interesting changes in this patch coming up. It doesn't say whether or not it's compatible with, it doesn't say if it's compatible with the old files. Everyone, to get the most important thing out of the way, we're happy to announce 3.1 Lem is named for science fiction author Stanislaw Lem, author of Stellaris. We named this patch Lem to honor the 100th anniversary of Stanislaw Lem's birth. This marks our first release by the Custodian team, and it will surely be an interesting experience as we keep working, iterating, and defining what a Custodian release looks like. I'd like to say a few words about this release to set some expectations in the future. I don't know what Custodian means in this case. This update has been worked on for a long time, which you can probably tell from the massive changelog, but future updates made by the Custodian team will likely not be as beefy. What we're trying to achieve is smaller releases more often, as stated when we officially announced the Custodian initiative initially here. So let's see what the deal is there. I'm assuming it just means is like so this has happened for a couple of Paradox games. You might have noticed there's been some changes to Paradox recently. So the CEO stepped down after a couple of years. Frederick Wester, one of the, I think, founders, is coming back to that role. They had a pretty big miss in terms of earnings. Now, you would normally hope a company like Paradox does not react very strongly to an earnings miss like that. I think their usual belief has been that there's sort of lumpiness in terms of games, and that they're a little more concerned with the long view. But the sentiment expressed over those earnings was that it was not good, and that they were unhappy with the results. And specifically, the reason why Eva Lundgren is stepping down said ultimately is differences over the sort of the future plans for the company, which, you know, like, people are saying reasonably nice things in terms of departures and such, and it is perfectly reasonable for people to have disagreements on this. So, for instance, John Schaefer of Civilization V fame was attached to a project with Paradox, and then there was sort of a parting of the ways. Basically, they just decided it wasn't working out. He went off to work on his game, and, you know, I don't know what happened with Paradox. So, like, everybody who leaves isn't necessarily doing so under bad terms. There is, of course, the news that there's some very negative results in terms of how the workforce is being treated at an internal survey. I don't have a whole lot to say about that. But it has also been true. So the EU sort of creative lead has kind of come out with an apology for what they feel has been a pretty grim track record of releases. Imperator has said that they're going to be holding updates for a while, and that the game is not being left, but they are working on other things. And I don't know, like, I suspect there's probably a moment where they're saying is like, you know, we're not hiring any more people. You know, we need to get things under control, and we need to prioritize what we're working on. And so I have a feeling that that's probably what's coming up on this. Now, again, this doesn't necessarily mean negative things. Obviously, you know, companies are big and complicated entities. But if you read some of the news items, it does seem that they're trying to find the most effective way to deploy their resources. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some people who seem to be able to operate on a few hours of sleep. Like Margaret Thatcher apparently had incredibly short sleeping intervals, but I'm definitely not Thatcher. So, anyways, let's see what this deal is with the Custodian team. Greetings, today I'm here to announce some very good news. Stellaris is not slowing down, but rather picking up the pace. We at PDS Green, never heard of PDS Green, are very happy to announce our new Custodians initiative, as well as the free update coming sometime this summer. The Custodians team. Stellaris as a game has been very exploratory, and the game has seen a lot of big changes over the years. I want to start by giving some insight as to why we've chosen to focus on this initiative. As we've released more expansions, we've had to take longer and longer between each release, as we've needed to spend more time focusing on quality, making sure each release is stable as possible. Paradox Development Studio also looks very different as it today versus how it looked just a few years ago. Things take longer, there are more processes in place, and there are a lot more people involved. Because each release is now further apart, it makes it harder for us to address some of the outstanding issues that might be affecting the community between DLC releases. We've also added more content, so it's also been harder to polish and maintain all of the amazing existing content that we've added over the years. We want to keep creating cool new experiences for Stellaris. We also want to be able to maintain a high quality for the base game itself and for older content. What we've done now is we've staffed up and split the Stellaris team into 2 teams that focus on different aspects of the game. One team we'll call the Custodians team will focus on free updates that we aim to release every 3 months, while the expansion team will focus on creating new content for the game. Examples of what the Custodian team will be working on: tweaking game balance, adding new content to old DLC, polishing existing content, bug fixes, performance improvements, AI improvements, multiplayer stability, UI, quality of life, and so on. So I think I kind of get I think I get kind of how they're I think how they're kind of getting this done, because I know they were talking when they released Lithoids. They said they were kind of hoping to revisit the idea of DLC species, so that each of the the species would wind up having special traits. But I know, like, again, it's always a tricky balance, right? Like, you can go back and update stuff that may not be selling as well as a brand new DLC. Actually, this is an interesting. Somebody made a comment yesterday on Rebel Galaxy Outlaw saying that the game was abandoned. Now, I haven't officially heard of production on the game being shut down. I know they are very slow to update, but it's interesting about the idea of the game being abandoned because it's a full release. Like, it's not. It's an early access title. So, like, I personally don't really feel, again, like, with all due respect to the person making that comment, they obviously have their own expectations for a game, but I've never felt like a game is this lifelong contract between me and the developer that they continue to only work on this thing. Like, especially Double Damage, which is a 5-person team. And, likewise, the truth of the matter is that if the game isn't selling very well, which I don't know, but, if ultimately the game has not found its audience, especially now that it's released on Steam and consoles, there's a very real question to ask about whether or not it's worth continuing to put effort into that title or to put effort into your next title. And I mean, that's just simply answering the question as to whether or not you can keep making games, period. Because if you can't make money making those games, then, ultimately it's going to have to stop one day. And you don't want that to stop when you don't have any money left in your bank account again. So I'm not necessarily opposed to people making financial decisions along those lines. But it's hard because obviously I also want to have a bunch of cool stuff for myself. There is almost no way that I'm going to read all of this. This will probably work here, I think. Index Gnome says they sure need to get their house in order. In your honest opinion, or humble opinion, they have focused too much on earning money, like a mini EA almost. So I'm the one person you should not say that to, because I actually really like EA as a company, and I think. So the only real difference I have with what you say is that every company focuses on money, and it does not matter how they present themselves. If it's a public company or it's a private company, every company that you've bought a game from cares about its bottom line. As long as the release game is good and not filled with bugs, you're okay with dev leaving it behind. The strength of making game highly moddable. Yeah, I mean, this is the drawback with Rebel Galaxy Outlaws. I think the mod tools were forthcoming, but again, like if it's not selling on PC, like they're probably not going to make the effort on it. But on the other hand, right, you want to make sure that you are like, so if you don't give people quality for their money, it's all, you know, again, I don't think it's bad that people focus on the bottom line. But if you don't give people value for money, you're probably not going to be able to keep making games for very long. If people just don't enjoy what you're putting out, they're not, they're not going to, they're not going to enjoy your good releases when they come out later. So the reason why, like, I try and come to the defense of EA is that I actually find it hard to see an example where EA's made the same mistake twice. So, you know, there's apparently an internal process that was set up to make sure that the backlash, like what happened with Battlefront 2, didn't happen again. And you will notice that pretty much every shooter that they've released subsequently does not have paid DLC. Like, they don't have DLC expansions. There will be cosmetic DLC. But the idea of releasing a game that you have to pay for the added maps, that's pretty much gone on all of their subsequent sort of shooters. And likewise, Battlefield 5, so far as I can tell, it was only cosmetic DLC. And then, of course, everybody complained about the women in the game, because they're always going to complain about EA. Apex Legends has made something close to $2 billion. And I know people talk about, what they don't like about the monetization framework, but it also seems to be an example where a lot of people talk about, it's not pay to win. It's one, it's good in that regard. So there's never going to be a consensus. Nobody's going to, like, unless it's me, is going to come out and say, oh, I love EA. And I'll say the same for Paradox too. Like, there are definitely times where I've looked at, like, what you get for a DLC and I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, I'm not buying that. And that's my right as a consumer, right? If I don't see the value in it, I'm not gonna go for it. And clearly, again, just to come on board with what you're saying here, like, if the company is coming out and apologizing for a string of low quality releases, it's clear something is going wrong, and whether or not that was chasing a certain dollar value, or whether that was them growing too rapidly, which isn't necessarily about chasing the bottom line, because of course if you hire more people, you're spending more money on them. I can't necessarily diagnose where the issue comes from, but I would be completely wrong to say that there doesn't seem to be something that's gone wrong and they're working on. Anyway, sorry, I wanted to talk about what's in the LEM update. Selectable traditions. Tradition trees are no longer hard-locked. Instead, you can now choose which trees you want to pursue in a playthrough. This includes a reworked UI as well as several new trees which allow further customization of empires. New tradition trees. They've been added to both the Nemesis and Apocalypse DLCs, as well as the new Mercantile tradition in the base game. Additionally, players may now choose 7 trees from a total of 11. Oh, interesting. Okay. Plantoids gets a bonus, so reproduce by budding. Play as a phototropic species that relies partially on energy or background radiation, with radiotropic as food. Use catalytic processing civic, which the manufacture of alloys from food, I think, allows the manufacture of alloys from food, or convert ideal planets into organic paradises with idyllic bloom. Wow, they're really expanding plantoids. Let's see what they're doing with humanoids, because that's, you'd think humanoids would be a little more generic. Play as the remains of an ancient clone army with a new clone army origin, who solely rely on ancient cloning vats to reproduce. Or devote your empire to becoming a masterful crafter, or play as a species of decadent pleasure seekers. The Wally play. Necroid species pack. Reanimators, renamed reanimated armies, can embrace the afterlife by reanimating more targets, including some leviathans and enemy troops defeated in battle. Wow, they must have seen that Necroids did not sell well. That makes me want to buy Necroids. The Death Cult Civic and the Necrophage Origin have also been rebalanced, and then other changes, rebalance, and restructuring of some civics and origins, as well as many bug fixes and improvements. Okay, that sounds interesting. Again, doesn't seem to indicate whether or not it's going to break my old save. I'm sure it will say so tomorrow, but I will leave it on your... I don't know. I'll leave it to your good judgment as to whether or not you want to see this one keep going, or if we can just reset it, because it'll only be 2 sessions old. But my apologies. We're half an hour and I haven't done any gameplay yet. So I'll just hit play under the slow mode. So we're building research labs on Phobos. Got to remember where I get my admin from. Right. Synaptic nodes. So energy credits and food into Unity and administrative capacity. So I kind of want to have one of those on every planet, but I know energy is sometimes hard to come by. So this seems to be a world where we're really going to be focused not so much on the natural resources as we are the specialized buildings. So put the synaptic nodes on this one. Mining world aggros. So these are the same. Nest planet is lower city districts. Bonus to complex drones. Okay, yeah. So most of these are the same as I would see elsewhere. So we're about to take another big desert well, we're about to take another world, and it is a big desert world. I do want to see what else is in the galaxy for me. Relentless barrage. Without warning, the gateway has once again opened up, this time releasing a swarm of hostile, enigmatic space creatures. Within minutes, this mysterious threat has taken position in orbit around Phobos and has started to bombard the surface with blue-tinted energy beams. We need to root our forces and stop this threat immediately before Phobos becomes a smoldering ruin, and our drones on the surface turn to ash. All we can do for them now is have them seek shelter and wait while the world around them is ravaged by the rain of blue fire. Battle stations. We made contact with mysterious aliens in the Itha system. We should find out more about them so that we may decide whether they would be suitable nutrition for our drones. For now, they've been given the designation Delta Aliens. First time watching live. Hello, Delveron1. I think you followed earlier, so thank you very much for that. And greetings from Canada. I think you may be the first, at least the first self-identified Puerto Rican watching the stream. I really appreciate you saying hi. I actually noticed on the YouTube channel's had this wonderful batch of growth lately, and I think I'm at the end of that, and it's kind of back to it's I think unless something changes in the next little while, it's going to fall. It's going to fall to declining, not growing, which, you know, easy come, easy go, right?
Our special project is complete.
But one thing I've really been delighted by over that run has been all of the new people kind of coming in and saying hi, because it's given me a completely different appreciation for who watches my channel and why they watch it. And we were actually just talking. Again, I'm not going to relitigate the whole thing. You don't need to wait another half hour before you see gameplay. But I was talking about this in the sense that it's been a nice opportunity to get the feedback that I'd like to see this in a playlist so that I can enjoy it in the proper order. And again, that's not something that's non-trivial for me, but I put that together. In fact, it's possible that you were the one to make that suggestion, Delveron1. So if you were, thank you. I'm completely doing that for this one. This species fear is not quite as exciting as the Black Codex, but it's I do really enjoy coming up with different species ideas, and I'm glad that people are feeling motivated to do more custom species. Special project completed. After continued studies of the massive skeletal remains found on Bera 7, Science Officer Ythog Unrove has concluded that the creature served as some kind of organic starship. Much smaller bones from at least 3 separate species were found within the larger skeleton, and we assume that these come from members of the crew. For unknown reasons, the organic starship suffered catastrophic damage and crash-landed on Bera 7. While we cannot begin to understand the biological engineering necessary to quote-unquote grow a starship like this, the study of these bones alone has substantially advanced our knowledge. So, building a replacement Corvette. I thought we got by without losing a ship, but apparently I was wrong. But yeah, so this one, we can take a minute here, and first we'll get our tradition. So synchronicity, I think we were going for the stability because it improved my production. So by synchronizing groups of drones, more efficient use of planetary infrastructure can be achieved. So yeah, species, we are playing fear, the concept of fear itself. Every time you were bullied, every time you were jealous of a promotion, every word said in anger, and every night you asked to keep the light on, did not pass into history, but went somewhere else, watching, waiting. The collective fears and anger of passing civilizations accumulated on a small planet in the Ether system, and have now begun to reach outside of its borders. The dread loved ones felt at the news of scouting ships going missing in that system have fed it. As will the news of each new fallen system. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. So this write-up I don't think quite works because it requires you to have been there at creation. But essentially the idea here, I wanted to try a devouring swarm. You pretty much have to go for this look if you want to go for it. And the idea here is that in addition to the fact that you have negative feelings and such, that they do in fact exist somewhere, and that past a certain threshold, they've now hit this point where they're sort of self-reinforcing. Do you have a favorite 4X game, not just the modern ones? So the old stuff that I would like would definitely be Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri. In terms of modern one, but don't get me wrong, I really like Civilization 6. I actually also really enjoyed Civilization Beyond Earth. I felt that game, particularly once the DLC was released, I really felt that game was underappreciated. I have not played the one that comes up the most in Stellaris, which would be Master of Orion 2. I haven't played that one yet, unfortunately. And I'm told it's excellent. It's one that I should try. But I've got gaps in my my background. The other funny thing is that I rather liked what I played of Spore, but I actually stopped playing it right around the time it turned into a 4X game. So I actually got to see if I still have that save, so that I can actually appreciate. I'm assuming that's the part that Soren Johnson worked on. But yeah, I know, Alpha Centauri, I actually did that on the GOG channel way back when, and definitely when I was on better terms with them. Although, let me just say, the person who runs the GOG channel, at least the last person I know who's running the GOG channel, I'm assuming they're still doing it, is an absolute sweetheart, and specifically went out of their way to try and correct some of the badness that happened with GOG. So that is not a blanket, and I get along well with people who are on that team. So that is not a blanket condemnation of the people involved with it. It's just the company itself is awful. And I'm talking specifically about the parent too. Now it's popular to say CD Projekt's a terrible company, but I could have told you that before Cyberpunk came out. But yeah, no, I mean, back, it's no point in going down that road again. Definitely one of the more fun experiences I had was being able to share Alpha Centauri, and it had a mix. There were a lot of people who were disappointed with that playthrough because I think they wanted to see mastery of Alpha Centauri, which I had not actually played that game in about a year, so I was definitely not going to deliver that. But what I really enjoyed was the number of people who hadn't seen it and felt motivated to go out and play it. Because we've certainly talked about it a few times here, you know, everything from the scenes from Baraka being used for the special project videos to just some of the ideas behind it. I pretty much always played University. Second one would be Gaia's Stepdaughters, but I don't know. It's a wonderful game, and it's one that definitely had a very heavy impact for me. Aurora 4X. Oh man, yeah. So I didn't know if that counts as an old one or not. I've touched on it. It was definitely a lot to take in the first time I tried it. I really do want to learn it better. So on that front, I am learning Shadow Empire. I will eventually learn Aurora 4X. There was another big one like that. Oh no, not like that, but and I actually was a little surprised at how much I enjoyed Dominions, although my understanding is that Dominions is a much better game when you play it with another person as opposed against the AI. I've never even heard of Star Ruler. But Delron, I'm delighted that you... Well, I'm assuming if you played the crap out of Civilization Beyond Earth that you liked it. I'm delighted to know that there are other people. Haley Urias of Mediatonic, so the Fall Guys sort of comms lead, also really enjoyed Beyond Earth, and I'm like, there's a reason why I like this person. So there are people who appreciate that game for what it is. There's also so I tried Gladius Relics of War. That's obviously a new one. Didn't find it bad. There are a couple things that didn't work for me, but it feels like that developer, I think they also did Pandora, which was an interesting one. And one that I want to try is Distant World Universe, I think. That's another one that it seems to be very large and complicated, which usually means I'm going to give it a shot, but I am short on time, and so it takes me a while to be able to get that stuff to play. Okay, we made first contact with mysterious aliens in the Menchib system. We should find out more about them so that we may decide whether they would be suitable nutrition for our drones. For now, they have been given the designation Zeta aliens. Sure. Although we don't see them in the system, so I'm wondering if they're just on one of the planets? Well, how could they be? It's all asteroids. I think I could afford to speed things up a little bit while we get the colony ship on its way. So one intermediate goal that I have for my military fleet is complete. There we go. One intermediate goal that I have is to get my fleet strong enough to take on the ancient mining drones. Clearly, that's not something that I can immediately take advantage of, but. We'll upgrade the Typhoon first just because it's a little cheaper, and then we'll put these guys in orbit. I don't want to completely spike my alloy production quite yet because I do need them for expansion. Oh yeah, Emperor of the Fading Suns was that Fading Suns. So it's not just that it was like a tie-in to the RPG, but I think Holistic Games was both the publisher, well, no, the author of the RPG, as well as the game. Now, I only ever played a demo of it, but that just got a recent release on GOG. I've not actually tried the full one yet. I seem to remember there was something about becoming the head, like you'd be assigned the head of the military for the Empire, and all of a sudden I was like facing this symbiote threat, and I had absolutely no idea what the hell was going on. But it was very captivating. I think that was actually the first I ever heard of the Fading Suns system.
Our swarm is strengthened.
And then didn't they change like the rule set? So I think Fading Suns became something like a GURPS RPG or something like that. Because I found there's another game which had a very surprising shift in my opinion, which was, did you know that there's an Alpha Centauri RPG? Because I didn't until I went and looked it up. Okay, Capital World needs more jobs. I am tempted to... Oh wait, if we turn minerals into research points, we are making this a research hub.
We have surveyed the system.
Yeah, this is one thing that surprises me a little bit. Like RPGs definitely like lend themselves towards, you know, you've got a setting and, you know, realize this, right? I mean, so like some of the most famous examples of these are very clear in their intentions. So for those of you who don't know, I've been doing this series of the Elder Scrolls. Oh, interesting. Yeah. So my understanding was that Emperor of the Fading Suns is based off of a tabletop RPG, whereas in the case of Alpha Centauri, I believe that it was turned into a tabletop RPG, or at least there was a tie-in product produced. Whether or not it's any good is up to me. Like I definitely think, I mean, it's science fiction, right? Science fiction is full of really interesting stuff that you can make. So I'm going to assume it's great. But what was I going to say? So I bounced off Skyrim the first time I played it. And again, for those of you that know this story, I apologize. You know, sometimes. Sometimes I'm stuck saying the same thing, especially when I'm a little tired. I'm actually going to have some water. So, I didn't understand why I've got this game where it seems like the world's coming to an end because the dragons are coming back. And yet... every few minutes, I've got somebody asking me to deliver their mail for them. And I'm somehow supposed to believe that this main quest is a priority when I wind up with a, you know, giant treadmill of quests to do. It was actually very frustrating for me. And so, you know, like I said, I bounced off it. It did not work at all for me. Okay, I need 170 minerals, and I see you there, Cranky. I'll talk about you in a minute. So I pretty much stopped playing and like uninstalled it. But then like I have friends who deeply love that series, and you know they're going on about how great Morrowind is, and you know they talk about they don't really care that much for Skyrim. They definitely didn't say that the stuff I had problems with wasn't a feature or a very important part of the series. But you know, it's just one of these things where I was intrigued enough by how much people liked it that I wanted to understand. I did not know that Paradox started out as a video game division of an RPG publisher. I felt that there was an RPG connection more than just their acquisition of White Wolf. Sorry, when I say felt, like I had that idea rattling around in my brain, and clearly it came from somewhere. So maybe somebody told me once upon a time and I forgot it, but that's really neat. But yeah, like I decided that the way I would handle it was I would actually play the series from the start. Because my usual feeling is that if you're going to play a series, you should most likely start with the earliest game that you want to play, because games generally get better over time. And if you play, like if you fall in love with Grand Theft Auto 5, and then you go back and play like Grand Theft Auto 2, you're going to wonder how this thing ever got off the ground. I thought Grand Theft Auto 2 is actually kind of neat. Like, it's a sci-fi Grand Theft Auto. I was intrigued. I didn't play it very much, but like I was like, oh, this wasn't what I was expecting. The first two are completely top-down though. So I did that, and I was surprised by how much I enjoyed The Elder Scrolls Arena, which is the very first one. And so I went on to Daggerfall, which I loved for its ambition, and then it really wore out its welcome. But the biggest thing is that I actually kind of, like, I got what they were doing. The manuals for those early games are really clear when they're saying, like, we want to create the video game equivalent of a tabletop role-playing game. That, you know, you're in the tavern one day and somebody says, hey, like, why don't you do this thing? And you can say, no, I'm bored. And you miss out on an adventure. And then you turn around and it's like, oh, but there's this weird looking house. Maybe I'll go in here. And, you know, you wind up spending hours on something that was completely unplanned, but the game is able to adapt towards it. And I actually think they do a very admirable job of capturing that feeling. And what was most important for me is, at least in the first Elder Scrolls game, in Arena, they would have holidays where you'd get like half off on your gear. And like half off, for me at least, was enormous. Like, I got some crazy OP gear at very early on in the game by just buying on the discount days. And it's funny because somebody says, like, you actually waited for the holidays? I'm like, yeah, doesn't everybody? Like, it's such a good way to find some deals. It's like, don't you wait for a sale to, you know, to buy your stuff? So what happened was, I would take these side quests to make sure that I was like doing dungeons that were close enough to the town that I could still come back in time for the good deals. And that got me in the mood to start doing these little side quests. And I suddenly started feeling comfortable with saying, it's like, yeah, you know what, just because it's in my quest log doesn't mean that I need to follow through with it. And I started working on the Elder Scrolls Wavelength, and I tremendously enjoy it. So the reason why I brought all this up is just the idea that it's obvious where the inspiration, especially for old RPGs, come from. That tabletop experience that I think a lot of game developers wanted to realize on games. Obviously, Larian is doing amazing work in that regard. Like, a friend who isn't much of a gamer played Divinity Original Sin 2, played it. He's like, I feel like I could do anything in this game. And I'm like, that's probably what they want you to feel. Yeah, it's the thing that I find so interesting is that if you go back to consider the source material for tabletop RPGs, it goes back to strategy wargaming, right? With chainmail and this idea of wanting to have, that more micro focus, like thinking about the individuals on the battlefield as opposed to these large units. And so every once in a while, like Total War Warhammer works with this. You've got individual characters that do wind up sort of doing quests, although again, these quests are always backed by an army. Age of Wonders Planetfall has a little bit of that, where you're going into Age of Wonders, the fantasy ones did as well, where you're going into dungeons to get powerful relics. But the thing that's so interesting is that, like, I don't think the idea of having these interesting worlds realized is limited just to the RPG. As we've been talking about, Emperor of the Fading Suns, Alpha Centauri tell these really interesting stories. To a certain extent, you're sort of forced into those stories because, you can't really complete the main quest without them. But I think there's some great opportunities for storytelling. And, Stellaris takes that in a slightly different direction, which is, you're the one to design your species and just use it as a great canvas. But it's a shame that people don't take those opportunities more often. All right, let me just catch up in reverse. Hello, Mr. Franz. We've got Delves had played Skyrim once years ago in college, so to finish it, you rush through the main quest and nothing else. You need to go back and take it easy to savor it. And Uncle Cranky's actually been playing it. He says the Anirim mod set, which makes Skyrim feel more fully featured. And his earlier comment, an Elder Scrolls series in which Chalky crushes the working man, steals their resources, and fulfills the greed of the noble class. Not very proletariat behavior, comrade. Uncle Cranky has got a big bushy beard, and he pretty much has a bunch of communist agitators always hanging around in his chat. So you'll have to forgive his extreme left-wing politics. We allow all sorts on this side here, but he is a New Zealand-based streamer, so obviously he voted Labour. And he, as I mentioned, he's been doing Skyrim quite a bit lately, but not limited to that. He's actually done everything from XCOM to, I think his favorite is Chimera Squad, to Mega Man, whatever the heck the pixel art one is called. They're all pixel art. But yeah, no, he's been playing some Mega Man as well. So definitely somebody worth checking out. There's so many great games that you can't play now after playing games since the mid-'80s. So I always thought DOSBox was supposed to be the answer to that. One that I really enjoyed, so I have to admit, somebody showed it to me on an emulator. That's the only way I wound up playing it was, so there's a great EA game, which was an inspiration for Mass Effect, called Starflight. And there is a PC version of it, which I have on GOG now, but it's not the same one that somebody showed me. The one that they showed me was apparently the Sega Genesis adaptation for it. And that is a huge graphical improvement, and it's a fascinating game. But it's I have no idea how you play a legitimate copy of it now. I think it's a great shame that is lost. I mean, again, you can play Starflight in its original PC form. It just looks quite primitive. If you want a background of that is written in a language called Forth. You can all Google that to figure out what that means. But another great example of just old stuff that I feel like we should have wider access to, but I'm not. I know, like, the emulator sites are there, right? You can open them up and play them. I just know that the people who made it are not necessarily realizing the benefits. Was there anything else that I missed out on? Wish you could go back in time and play all those games for the first time again with an innocent mind. I think if people say that about Dark Souls too, and just put it all down as all games from boomer to zoomer. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like game preservation is something, like, Unity changes too much to be something where we can say, like, you just need to, we just need somebody to come up with a good conversion of Unity so that when, we switch to different processor types. Like, I think probably the biggest loss of old games that we really like is going to be happening in the next few years, because it does seem to be there's a trend now for people to switch the processor architecture, so we're moving away from x86, or at the very least they are adding the alternative, the reduced instruction sets, so stuff like ARM and its open source alternatives, and emulation is a thing, and I think that is going to preserve a certain amount of the old games. But I do think that with a shift in architecture, we are very likely going to see a lot of games that maybe we got accustomed to either being able to play or being able to sort of know was always there. I think give it enough time, and with the proliferation of these other computers, which again I totally understand why people who are manufacturing computers are taking on these new architectures. The gains are just too good to pass up. But I do think what's going to happen is that we're going to wind up with another batch of games which under normal circumstances we would have taken it for granted that we can play them. And then I think we're going to realize just how much is rather dependent on things staying the way that they are. And I hope they find a fix to it, because I think it would be a great shame to miss an opportunity to see some of the stuff that people are making games that we like now, to see some of the stuff that they were playing. All right, it has quickly become apparent that the so-called Zeta aliens are in fact part of a major spacefaring civilization. Our probes in the Phaethon system have detected starships fitting between a number of space stations across the system. And there is a larger military station near the system star that seems to act much like the outpost we build in systems we claim. We've been able to intercept considerable volumes of communication traffic, but so far accurate translations have proven elusive. So let's nab one of them for closer investigation, or keep all of it. As we have located their home systems, we may try to abduct specimens from there. Yep. Basically a Steam reset, 600 to 0 overnight. Good God. Alright. Sorry for the longer digressions tonight. I'm, as you can probably detect, I'm feeling the effects of my lack of sleep. Deja vu dig tumbled down. It appears that the passageway descending towards the underground chamber has suffered some mishap in the past. A cave-in has filled the lower part of the shaft with boulders and dust, in turn making the excavation venture slow and frustrating. Keep digging. This is actually a chance, so for a number of you, Mr. Friends, Index Gnome, Delves, Cranky. Sorry, I'm missing one. It was my friend from Puerto Rico, Delveron1. For those of you who did, so I was asked the question, what classic games do I like, or old style 4X games do I like? But this is actually one of the ones that I quite like chat answering as well, for those of you that do want the chat. Again, so this is not one of these like very craven like, hey, how you all doing? Oh, you're Delveron, you just changed your name in the last minute. Okay, I was like, oh man, we got plenty of cool people in chat tonight. Sorry about that. Delves22. Delves 22nd of their name. And hey, Real Ground. I've seen some vids of this game. It looks fun. This is a wonderful game. Again, keeping in mind that I've been given a copy for promotional purposes, and so I'm contractually obliged to say no. Obviously, my feelings of this may be different than somebody who paid full freight, because there's quite a bit of DLC for this game now. But I like it. Like, they were actually talking about that. We read some patch notes for a patch that's going to be coming out tomorrow, and they're talking about how it was more of an experimental approach. So I don't remember if you've played any of the other Paradox stuff. Let's just see. First contact. A detachment of covert operations drones led by Grog Beamsend managed to seize a small Zeta Aliens logistics vessel in the Phaethon system. Along with the ship's crew, which was largely taken alive, much of the vessel's hardware and computer systems were also spared major damage. Though the operation went without a hitch and our operatives were able to escape without pursuit, it is probably too much to hope for that the Zeta aliens remain ignorant of our actions, so they shall give up their secrets. Our fleets in their territory have fled to avoid reprisals. Let the vivisection commence. We will likely find out more from this approach, but the Zeta aliens will be extremely displeased when they find out. Or let's see how they taste. We'll also investigate the ship for clues about them. Of course, we're awful. No, I wonder why they're hostile.
We flee the hostile storm. Our son's vessel is under attack.
Oh no, what are you doing? Why did you retreat into the alien space station? You fool. You've yet to get the latest DLC for EU4. Can't get into EU4, it just seems too boring for you. So EU4 took me a little bit to get into, but I actually quite like it now. The really interesting thing about EU4 is that you have history. And one of the things about it is that you have these asymmetric starts. There's no guarantees, right? If you're Ulm, that's going to be very different from, that's going to be very different from, well, yeah, and that also applies to Victoria too. So if you play Brazil in Victoria 2, you're going to have one experience, and if you play Belgium, you're going to have another. But in the case of Stellaris, it's very open. Everybody starts with that one planet. It's like having the one settler in Civilization. And I can't really think of a Paradox Grand Strategy game that's done that before. So they're talking about how it's a rather experimental game. And I really like the approach of being able to sort of tell whatever science fiction story you want. Because obviously so much of the streams have been spent talking about, science fiction that we like, or things that, that we enjoy, or ideas. I think probably the different ideas that I have for species sort of speak for themselves. Yeah, exactly, Index, with the dynamic story. And this is one of the reasons I actually like a lot of the more flavor DLCs, because it just always inspires new ideas. And what, obviously the context of how you're playing. This is one of the reasons why I don't mind like lowering the difficulty a little bit and just playing something that reflects what I think is an interesting species, because, well, one, I'm apparently getting clobbered on the higher difficulty levels, so I need to relearn the game. But more importantly, too, like, I just think there's something interesting about telling the story the way you want it to, as opposed to being like, oh, I need energy credits right now, so I'm going to do the energy credits choice. And that can lead to some really interesting situations. Yeah, CK2. So actually, yeah, this would be the interesting one where I'd say, like, CK2, you really do just want to play the worst person ever. And so in the case of Stellaris, you can still do that, but I think Stellaris has enough of a game around the, like, mess around with the buttons kind of stuff, that I feel like Stellaris really kind of hit that balance between the two. And again, I think a large part of that is because you're not dealing with sort of history being fixed, and and you sort of being a victim of your circumstance. You do, to a certain extent. Like, if you wake up next to an advanced start, you're going to have to be a bit better behaved. But as a whole, like, you can just mess around, and I like that feature quite a bit. Okay, so we've got the fusion reactor, which is good. We'll upgrade when we can, but we do want to cause whatever damage we can on the bad guys first. Nuclear fusion processes generate a great amount of power for ships, but without many of the risks associated with fission power. We can take... I'm kind of inclined towards zero-G laboratories, although automated exploration protocols is tempting as well. How much of our science is based on stations? Almost none of it, so we will do automated exploration then. So we pretty much have to take the Akamar system because of its energy resources. How are we doing for housing elsewhere? So Phobos is the next one that needs Hive District. So unfortunately, one of my fleets is faster than the other one, just based on the fact that it's got an admiral in it. Stellaris is also simpler in some ways, not having to deal with all the personal details of historical characters and all the history scenarios. You can forge your own path across the galaxy. Yeah, it kind of depends on which game you're referring to. So in the case of CK2, obviously you have this whole role-playing system behind it, where you have a bunch of individual traits, and you care very much about who's related to who. In EU4, I feel like you can sometimes get away from the individual ruler stuff. Like, it's not irrelevant. It is, of course, your source of monarch points, and generally you kind of, and you don't want to wind up in like a personal union or something. But for the most part, you can kind of get by. But again, like, depending on how you start, like, if you start as Burgundy, have fun. If you start as the Ottoman Empire, you're gonna have a little easier time. So it's I don't know, like obviously they're all, I mean, this is one thing that's nice about the grand strategy games is they're all different, so that you can approach this idea of a very complex sort of quasi simulation in which you are making strategic decisions and ones that will deal with all of the different factors of your empire, but they all also reflect their times. So, you know, in a case of something like Crusader Kings, where the idea of the nation state doesn't really exist, and the most important ties are that between the lord and the vassal, that has a level of attention on individual people that is not true for some of the other Paradox games. Contrast that to Hearts of Iron 4, which incidentally, Hearts of Iron 4 is the one Paradox game I've not been able to fully wrap my head around. What I tend to find with that is I'll start in 1936, I will implement a game plan that I think is designed to help me with the war, and I find out how completely wrong I have been over the past 3 years. So I've actually been really struggling with Hearts of Iron 4 simply because I feel like my process of playing it has been wasting quite a bit of time to find out that I was doomed from the start. And I wish there were better guides on it, because I'm finding the wiki isn't quite doing it for me. I will also admit I haven't played a lot of Victoria 2, but I know Victoria 2 is definitely in the old style, so the level of complexity is quite high just in terms of what they're presenting to you. But yeah, Stellaris is very easy to get into. But just in terms of contrast with Hearts of Iron 4, like that one is very much concerned about how do you get all, you know, the factors of production organized towards supporting the war effort. Like it's not just enough to, you know, it's not just enough to say that you want to send an army somewhere. Like you are basically answering the question that George Marshall had to answer when he got started, which is how do you take sort of a third-rate military and get ready to fight, you know, the most important war that, you know, arguably that, I mean, I suppose there's a question of whether or not the War of Independence is the most important one for the Americans. But, you know, certainly, like, I would say there's a good argument for the most important war that country is going to fight against an incredibly well-prepared army. You know, like, the fact of the matter is when the Americans showed up, they were not very well trained. The people that they were fighting knew quite a bit more about making war than they did. So there's just something very interesting about that focus in Hearts of Iron 4, and I really wish I understood it better. But it's a great example in terms of just how this idea of the grand strategy game, of being able to take all of the different elements of your political entity, let's say, because if I want to include Crusader Kings, you can't really say the state and it mean the same thing. I just think it's really interesting to see all the different expressions of that idea, and it being sort of attached to a particular timeline or a particular idea. Special project completed. The aborted terraforming process on Wasat Secundus has finally been completed. After seeding the atmosphere with billions of terraforming nanites, the alien bioengineering machinery has significantly altered conditions on the moon's surface. The ecosystem and climate have been stabilized, and a new alien biota adapted to this climate has been introduced. Oh, neat. So let's see what we ended up with. The Savannah world. Not perfect, but not terrible either. It's like 3.5 Rotgun, really. I wish it said what it was before, though. I don't recall if this thing needs repairs. Oh no, obviously it doesn't. So there's going to be a 20-day difference between these two ships, but we'll make it work.
construction is complete. Crushing a hostile hive.
It is very satisfying to see those missiles shot out of the sky. Less satisfying to see them chasing my ships, though. $558. We might be able to take that. Ah, this is considerably stronger. Oh. Yeah, they're ready for a fight. Oh my god, that's a lot of them. Olaf!
Technology conceived.
Good to see you. I clearly should have understood who I was messing with. There are many alien empires who would gladly seize our worlds for themselves. We must be prepared for them, should the worst come to pass. I think we just brought the worst. Let's go for that unity. I know we left planetary unification on the back burner a little bit earlier. CK, give me money for troops. Vassal EU4. L'état c'est moi. And HOI4, fight for freedom. Stellaris, space plants, go! Olaf, you've been here since the start, just not able to type till now. Hey, no worries, Olaf. As you can know, I'm sort of running on a lean mixture tonight, but I really do appreciate you. Really appreciate you coming in and sharing your time with us. All right. Synchronized agents, so agents with similar purposes shall be given orders as a group, reducing the strain on the overmind. And coil gun. Coil guns are more powerful versions of the early mass drivers, using electromagnetic coils to rapidly accelerate projectiles towards targets. Let's go for... It is incredibly tempting to go for geothermal fracking, just simply because I am going to need to build a lot of stuff really quickly. Victoria 2 and Stellaris are the ones you love the most of the Paradox games, not counting Prison Architect, etc. Yeah, it's true. I think the distinction that most people make in that case is the difference between Paradox and Paradox Development Studio and Paradox the publisher. And I can definitely see it. I am ashamed to admit that Prison Architect hasn't quite worked for me. I want to like it more than I actually do, but I find myself a bit lost when I play it. Ooh, get out of there. If I have to upgrade this starbase, I will. I guess it depends how... Oh, they're coming for us. Oh, this might be a short playthrough. Oh, this is bad. I'm sorry, I was only kidding. It's okay, this game is a game for smart people. Probably not my sort of thing. Indeed. Alien material studied. We have concluded our study of the vessel we recently captured from the Zeta aliens. The absence of a living crew made our investigation challenging. So we found out that they were robots when we tried to bite into them. Fortunately, they left behind enough material for our language drones to gradually decipher their language and identify them as the Armathi Trading Coalition, allowing us to communicate with them should we so please. Furthermore, we were able to study the ship's technology, which has helped our research drones uncover some novel new approaches to our own research problems. So we gained influence, ends the first contact procedure with the Armathi Trading Coalition. We will find future first contact processes easier to complete, and we have gained intel and physics research. Excellent.
The others reach out to make contact with our mind.
You hacked us, and now you call us friend? Bah! The Armathi Trading Coalition will remain vigilant towards your kind. So... Ravenous Hive will be watching you, or... We sense prey. Ooh. Our theoretical models have long suggested the existence of other intelligent civilizations in the galaxy. This theory has now been confirmed. The alien political entity that we've encountered has a level of technology similar to our own, indicating that we achieved spaceflight at roughly the same time. Pray. Okay, first things first, we're going to send an envoy to... come after them. We don't really know anything else about them, though. And we've got too much influence, which is not a good thing. Fortify the border. I might change this later, but... I feel like there should be other things I can dump my influence into. Again, I'm getting used to playing these crazy hive mind things. No factions to mess with or anything. Glum404 or Glumv. Bought Industries of Titan and Cultist Simulator, trying to convince your girlfriend to let you dip into your Roth account so you can buy Stellaris and DLC. Yeah, I mean, if you've been saving it for 10 years, you should be able to get all the DLC. Well, the good news, and I'm assuming... So first of all, I'm delighted that I'm going to take it as implied that it is my playing of these games that has drawn your attention to them. And thank you for supporting these developers, particularly Industries of Titan and Cultist Simulator, because these are made by small teams of people who essentially wouldn't be making a living otherwise. I know in the case of Brace Yourself and Industries of Titan, like, it started off as the team that made that made Crypt of the Necrodancer, and it's grown to now incorporate, at the very least, 2 games that are currently in early access and development that we know of. It is entirely possible they're working on other stuff that we don't know. But just because the company's gotten bigger doesn't mean that people don't depend on it to sort of be able to pay the bills. Cultist Simulator is literally 2 people, with contractors, admittedly, but that's how they pay the bills. And so yeah, I mean, it's great that you're supporting them. The good news is, and I'm sure you know this about Stellaris, is that the secret is that you wait for either a new expansion. I don't know if it will go on sale for this new 1.4 update, but the base game is 75% off whenever it goes on sale. And then basically, as long as you don't mind playing a couple of DLC behind, and particularly if you're just getting into the game, it's actually not a bad way of learning. But the way I've always been able to make sense of the Paradox games that I'm not given keys for is just to sort of slowly shuffle in DLC as they reach a price that I'm willing to pay for. Because, I'm not going to lie to you. Okay, I'm sorry that there's been so much system talk. I think probably most people have kind of accepted that that's the mood of tonight. I do have a bit of a theory in terms of why the Paradox games and the Total War games have the specific model that they do. And I think it is specifically because Like there's a cheeky way that I can put it, and there's a real way that I can put it. And I'm gonna put the that game already exists, Index Gnome. I was actually really upset by it, but you can find it's not a Paradox game, but Zero Wizard, dude, it's been a long time since I caught a stream. Like a long time. Thank you, Zero Wizard. I'm trying to recall. Did you change your name? Because it's not immediately coming to me, but. Yeah, the people who made Honey Pop are like basically did. Okay, so it's not exactly a brothel list. Like it's Honey Cam Studio, but from what it was described to me, there's like a whole bunch of like you pay to like give the performers drugs and stuff like that. I was like, oh, so it's human trafficking simulator, only it's designed to be titillating and not actually dealing with the horrible consequences of this. And I was really upset when I saw the description. And maybe this is just me like becoming a big old, lefty softy or something like that. But like I really wanted to know why that game had to exist. And I kind of hate that I'm, drawing attention to it by mentioning it. But yeah, like at least what was described to me was something that I found very odious, because it's definitely not packaged in the kind of the way that you think such a thing would be. Excuse me. Obviously, some people might really get something out of it. May not be as bad as I imagined, but yeah, I actually got to say, it's like, do you want a key for this? And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, so yeah, this is the thing. It was the ad copy that was sent to me about what it was, and I was like, number one, I'm pretty sure I can't stream this, and number two, like, shame on you. And by the way, that is not I'm not against the idea of there being like pornographic or racier games. Like obviously there is a demand for that, and people want to play that stuff, and that's up to them. I have my option to sort of turn away, but it's it's sort of the choice of what, like there are ways of doing it's a way of making a game where you get to see naked bodies without it necessarily being like, the lighter side of human trafficking. So anyway, sorry to make that super dark. I know Night Valiant's in here, but there was another thing I was going to say about... Oh yeah, so strategy games and the structure of strategy games. Actually, because I'm going to be doing that, let me just take a quick second here to shout out Night Valiant, the Brazilian boomer who... No, we've been enjoying between Cranky and Night Valiant. I've been laughing at their taste of games, calling them boomer games if they're like more than 5 years old. But Night Valiant has been playing Legend of Dragoon, and that's where the quote, "What up, millennial? You running your colony on spring pea toast?" We are trying to make turn the Armathi Trading Coalition into spring pea toast, but then we found out. And by the way, it is smashed spring pea toast. Then we found out they have many, many, many more ships. Cranky's the super boomer. You take your boomer crown to him. He is so good at the boomer game. I mean, I was talking about Starflight. That is definitely a very old game. Not like I played it on release, but I have been known to play the occasional old game. But that's another streamer who I like. But yeah, the structure of strategy games and why they have the DLC policies that they do. The cheeky way that I can say this is that basically the people who grew up playing tabletop war games are older, they're single, and they have a heavy nostalgia factor. So like if you release a BattleTech... So like think about MechWarrior Online and how much they make you spend to get like your favorite mech. It's quite a bit. I actually quite like MechWarrior Online, but it's got a pretty aggressive monetization model. I think I'm going to try... I'll cancel the upgrade on Menshib and see... Or on Bera and see if we can get Menshib. Because I don't think Bera gives me anything. And then if you kind of think about like when you play something like Warhammer Fantasy Battles, you've got the base game, and then you've got a rule book that you buy, or if you play tabletop, you don't just buy one book, but you need like the game runner's guide, and then there's like a manual for like setting or monsters or whatever. If it's tabletop wargaming, generally you're buying a bunch of individual models. Like the fact of the matter, and like I say this as somebody who I do enjoy playing board games. I have never been huge into wargaming except as this very interesting like curiosity that I wish I understood better, but like it's hard to find people to play with. This is why online gaming is so great. But basically, you've got an audience that is already tapped into this idea that part of enjoying the hobby is continuing to do these outlays of cash in order to play it, right? So again, I'll just take Warhammer as an example. Like, you buy a big expensive box set, and then you buy a book about your army, and then you buy paints for that army. And as you build that army, you'll buy another box of expensive things so that you can paint those. And you spend a lot of time on it. It means a lot to you, and new editions keep coming out, and I don't mean to suggest that this is like some terrible oppressed gamer. I do find that sort of stuff to be shockingly expensive, but somebody would say the same with me and like buying hardcover textbooks. Like, I like reading them, but they're not cheap. Especially if they have business in the title. If they have business in the title, they get like a 75% markup. It's embarrassing. But the thing is that I feel like this audience, so the people who are going to play Paradox style games, who like historical grand strategy games, or the people who will play Total War, are very much primed for the idea that there is not a single entity that you buy and then you're done with it. And that is obviously very different from playing Mario Brothers. Like, what was the expansion to Mario Brothers? I don't know if there's ever been an expansion to Mario Brothers. I suppose with like Smash or something like that, there's like updates that keep coming out that add new characters or whatever. But obviously, if your idea of gaming is that you have these fixed entities, and I mean, if you go far enough back, sort of pre-internet, like, that's kind of how you have to play them, right? There might be a boxed expansion, and assuming that it's available in the store that you want to buy it from, you'll be able to play it. But it's kind of why I understand there being a bit of a bristling at the idea of sort of post-release or release content or live service or whatever. Because if you're used to thinking of a video game as a single thing that you get and it's done, then you have one idea in terms of what it's going to cost you. And if gaming to you has sort of been this long-term commitment, sort of like, building model trains, and you're never quite done with it, you always just keep adding more and more little bits. Model trains are really cool, by the way. Like, I've never done model trains, but I've seen some of the like really big sets, and that is an incredibly impressive hobby that looks incredibly nerdy, but I don't know. I'm sure one day I'm gonna like just be locked in a basement somewhere, like with my little train conductor hat, messing around with them, but that hasn't happened yet. I have been to a train museum though. Trains are awesome. And then I think there was a while where these two worlds sort of crossed over, where people were enjoying these nice long strings of updates. And these would generally be updates that are free, the game sort of being continued to be developed and added onto. And for a while, it was probably enough that the added sales from people sort of discovering the game as the result of continued updates would be enough to finance it. But it's also very clear that, like in the case of Paradox, they're upfront saying it's like, we want to make a game that is like a long-term commitment and something that we're in the long haul for, and we need to find a way to make it commercially viable. They specifically went out and said, how do we make a game where people spend more than just once on the game and are done with it? And in this case, I think what they've done is basically just rediscovered what the tabletop model forever. So again, I get to be kind of cheeky and say it's like, it's a bunch of old people remembering their childhoods. They're just buying the same miniatures, and they're just digital versions now. That's not strictly true, and that's not true for everything. So like, presumably Dawn of War 3 could have been a DLC laden extravaganza where you're paying for every different army. that kind of seems to be how Gladius wound up doing things. But it's in the end, I just think it's different frames of reference, and ultimately I think strategy gamers are probably a little bit more familiar with that model and so bristle against it less. Our presence in the Amaranthi Trading Coalition has taken on a clandestine aspect. Spymaster Grog Beamsend is now situated at the core of the burgeoning spy network and Amaranthian space. Obviously, too, this is a positive statement, not a normative statement. If you think games should have one fixed price and then not be developed on, I'm not committing to sort of one stance or the other. I mean, obviously what we're living through now is the hybrid model, which is, most games do seem to have continued development, which is financed through expansions, through, paid upgrades. But, how did they get so big then? Okay, I got some ideas about how I'm going to fix this. So first of all, we're going to put starports on each of our worlds. So we'll save one for Menshib. Don't have the alloys for him. Here's that move. I want worst looking game, something. Yeah, I mean, it's, so like Cultist Simulator is not a bad example. Like, obviously, the idea of adding romance to the game, like, that's something that, that is something that has been added to Cultist Simulator that was not present in the game. And the Weather Factory was inspired by Paradox in terms of how they handle DLC. So, like, basically, the romance stuff was added to the game regardless of whether or not you own Dancer. However, there are certainly things that you cannot act... Okay, actually, out of curiosity, has anybody in chat seen my my mapping of, like, the network analysis of Cultist Simulator? Because I can bring that up really quickly. You like DLCs if they don't become forced. You feel EU4 failed here. Some of the updates almost break the game unless you get a DLC that came with it. When DLCs keep the game alive, you're all for it. Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's kind of why I make the distinction in terms of just saying, that I'm not making, a normative claim here. Because clearly there are different ways that can be, that can be handled. Like, one thing I wasn't crazy about for some of the Paradox, or some of the EU4 DLC, was that things that seemed like quality of life improvements were locked behind DLCs. And there's like no law saying that you should not have to pay for quality of life improvements. But the ability to sort of access, quickly access people who want to, excuse me, have an alliance with you, that's very helpful. That enhances enjoyment of the game, and I feel like it's probably more in their long-term interest to make the game accessible and interesting to players. So I was a little surprised. Excuse me, sorry. I was maybe a little surprised that was locked behind a paywall, but it's their game, right? And I did resist buying Mandate of Heaven for a while. Okay. How good is my search engine option? Wait. Oh man, that's a first hit. Cool. Yeah, Delves22. I mean, it's also fair to say, like, if you read the developer diaries, they did put out an apology for. They did put out an apology for. I think they said since Golden Dawn, they sort of feel like the quality really hasn't been there. So, I think some people are justified in waiting just simply because it really hasn't. It really hasn't been working for them. All right. Anyways. This is a blog I wrote. It's an old one. Like, publishing date is May 26, 2020. I actually wrote this thing like a year before. But the big one is, so for those of you that haven't played it, the person who wrote the Horizon Signal DLC for Stellaris was doing so when they were sort of on their Ronin year and they were building their own sort of micro studio. And the first release from that micro studio is a game called Cultist Simulator, which is sort of a card-based narrative game. And what this analysis that I did was, so all of the cards are in a JSON file, and one of the community members and sort of a small employee for a while of that company, Lyrositer, helped me sort of import all of those JSON files into this like file that I could read. And so what I'm about to show you is basically a map of all of the individual connections to all of the cards in Cultist Simulator. It is definitely not an easy game to understand. If you are interested, I do actually have a proto tutorial for the game online. This is a huge file, by the way, so it is going to take, even on my internet connection, it's going to take a bit to load. I didn't appreciate it would take that long. Oh, here we go. Okay. But yeah, so this is what Cultist Simulator looks like if you take all of the different cards and put them together. It gets the dot gets bigger the more things are connected to it. The lines are sort of connecting individual traits on cards. So auctionable is a huge node because so many things that you can sell are auctionable. What I find really interesting about the game is, like, you'll notice that there are these little offshoots, right? So, you go from knock, and then, a couple of those will take you up to sending, and, the sendings go further to sort of, apostle connections and so on. You have all of these different little, you have these little islands that still connect into the main game. Those aren't the ones that interest me the most. The ones that really interest me are these little things up here, right? And this is actually a way that you can see the logic of the DLC inside of Cultist Simulator, which is there's no connection to a lot of these different not every single island here, by the way, is associated with DLC. But, in this case, these are all of the long for the Apostle. So the Apostle is actually free. It was a free update for the game, but the Apostle is a separate legacy that is independent of the other games. So that's sort of another example. Whereas you have something sort of remote here, this little cluster. So this is Job. Now, Job clearly is something that has been in the base game. It just happens to be, it's really only connected to the rest of the world through funds. And I thought this is kind of interesting. So I specifically built this graph the way so that the secret world that exists inside of Cultist Simulator is at the center and all colorful. So, like, I got to pick the colors and all of that. I obviously spent a little time producing this chart. But it is really interesting, right, that in this game that's about the occult and sort of delving into the secrets that lie beneath the skin of the world, you, like, the whole idea of the mundane world, the job, is just this little branch off to the corner here, right? You need it to live, but that's not the focus. And for the rest of it, you just have these, very elaborate connections. So basically, if you understand all of this graph, you should be able to understand Cultist Simulator. But yeah, the reason why I brought that up was just to talk about to talk a little bit about the way DLC works and integrates into a game. Like in this case here, you can actually kind of see the way that particular developer made something that was of value to a customer, that they, If you don't get anything, then you don't buy the DLC. If you lock away too much, then the game is maybe not as enjoyable. And essentially what's happened in here is the base experience of the game has sort of remained intact, but there are these little islands of content so that if you want to play, say, the Dancer Legacy, that necessary hook to get you into the Dancer content is in there. This game is called, the thing that this chart exists for is the game Cultist Simulator by Weather Factory. It's a very unique and very indie game. Actually, I can give a Steam link. I thought Stellaris took a lot of Oh yeah. No, sorry. I kind of went off the reservation on that one. I'm not sure if it's going to break this save or not, though. So we're fairly early into this one and next door to somebody with lots of ships. But I am intrigued. And I mean, it's named after Stanislaw Lev. That's got to be good news, right? All right, well, clearing away the rubble and rocks, a peculiar discovery was made, an alien tool that... Actually, I'm most interested in seeing what happens with the plantoid species. I'm probably going to do another plantoids species next, based on that patch. A peculiar discovery was made, an alien tool that closely resembled a common pickaxe was found crushed between craggy rocks. If the mining technology retained by previous diggers was on par with that type of equipment, the previous digging of the shaft, a shaft hundreds of meters deep, shows remarkable commitment. What is it in the depth that was worthy of such excursion? Ask Andy Dufresne. Yeah, the budding mechanics. I know it's something that they taught. So it's really interesting if you hear the developers of this game on Twitter. So like Wiz Martin Anward is obviously not attached to Stellaris anymore. I think he's working on Victoria 3. You get these interesting hints. So he had been talking for a very long time about how espionage was something that they were talking about adding to Stellaris, but was like one of the last things that they'd not actually put into the game yet. It's fascinating that a desert world has so much agriculture. I need the energy though. Actually, you know what? Even before that, I got 3 jobs available already. We should probably expand our districts on Phobos. But yeah, he was talking about how espionage was something that was sort of on the plan, but had not yet been implemented. And of course, that was what we finally got with Nemesis. So it's interesting to sort of see how they talk about. It's interesting to see how like people will talk about what their ideas for the game are, and then years later finally see it implemented. And the one that kind of interests me was when Lithoids came out. They basically said something very similar, which was like, we can see ourselves going back to the old species packs and giving them new traits, which I think is a very good idea, because I like the species packs, and I actually think Stellaris is a game that does reward adding a little bit more flavor to it. But clearly, if you only want to buy DLC that's attached to specifically to gameplay, then, to a certain extent, I think things like the, like the species packs might be a bit disappointing, because unless it's Lithoids and now Necroids, they weren't really giving you anything other than portraits to look at, which again, in my opinion, is fine, but it's not everyone's cup of tea. So I'm particularly intrigued by how they're going back and sort of breathing some new life into those species packs. So mostly because you can never see decoding or code breaking tech that you like ever, making it hard to get you intel on your neighbors. You remember when it just came out and you had the one screen for the planet. It was simple and straightforward. Now there's so much work to be... Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. As a whole, I mean, I'm also pretty easy to please, so I'm pretty happy
Our construction is complete.
with where the game's gone. Like, generally, I'm trying to think of any changes that have happened into Stellaris where I was like, I really wish they didn't do that in that game. And I can't really think of any examples like that. Gain intel and maximum infiltration level. I don't really want to spend 200 energy on this right now. So I think we're just gonna build our spy network. We can go up to level 50. So. Yeah, well, actually, the species that we did before was this species we made called the Black Codex, which I really liked, and I actually really enjoyed doing the espionage for that. It didn't save us from getting absolutely clobbered, but it was a fun ride. I guess this is the thing. Like, I suppose one case, and I'm trying to think if this is a danger that Stellaris runs into. It's a really good gateway drug to the other Paradox Grand Strategy games. So I feel like if you play Stellaris and like it's like a rodeo. If you kind of stick on long enough, you'll really enjoy it and you'll become like a fanatic for this sort of stuff. It's time we did the galaxy a service and rid the market of your cheap off-brand knockoffs. Okay, so they are egalitarian, xenophilic, and militarists. Quite literally ruthless capitalists. We definitely need to get ready for a war against these guys. Oh yeah. No, Malator, I'm definitely not trying to suggest that you're a new player, but like in general, I think one of the really big selling points for this game has been that people who maybe hear a lot about, say, Crusader Kings, or like, again, people who have like a friend, like people I'm friends with who have a friend like me who like constantly go on about the insane stuff that they're doing in this nerdy strategy game. I think it's hard not to be exposed to something like that and like you want to see what's going on. Like, why is this strange man so obsessed with like sleeping with his relatives? And usually hide your nerdiness so you don't show it in public anyway. Yeah, it's very hard for me to suppress my nerdiness, but like my job is like by definition nerdy, so like everybody I'm hanging around with is like usually a nerd. So but like I'm the coolest out of the nerds, just so we can be clear. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I just think to a certain extent, Stellaris has been. You've been working with cars and mechanics and engineers. Oh man, so you're like, let's be honest. People who are really into, that's just it. Like, people who are into cars are the biggest nerds possible. The way they talk about it and obsess about that stuff, I wish I could have that level of passion for anything. But it is socially acceptable nerdiness. Like, it's not like you don't secretly think that auto mechanics are carrying a pair of Spock ears in their back pockets. Although, let's be honest, they totally are. There are absolutely some mechanics who are also more conventional nerds. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, cars are completely socially acceptable nerdery. Yeah, Delves has got it right. Chad Nerd Sister. This is John. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like Stellaris is probably the best chance you have of getting somebody into these kinds of games. And I think it's interesting to see how this game walks that line between being able to give people new things to do and make it a more complex and interesting game while not completely bucking off a potential new audience. And I actually think that there's a lot that we can learn from Stellaris. Because, again, I've been talking about wanting to play Shadow Empire. Shadow Empire definitely seems like my kind of game, but I need to read a couple hundred pages of manual before I even think about playing it. Or we were talking about Aurora 4X, right? Fascinating game. I love the idea behind it. You don't sit down and play that thing casually. And so I think Stellaris is a great example about how you can make a game that has great depth to it and goes interesting places, but doesn't do so in a way that throws off a broader audience. Like, obviously it sort of hurts me a little bit that, once upon a time I could sort of rely on being a bit of a fixture in terms of Stellaris. Like, there weren't a ton of people playing it, and so I'd naturally just rise up the list. And there's a lot more conventional people playing the game now, and that's a really good thing because it means there's more people to play this stuff with. But like, I remember like seeing, it's like, oh wow, like this is somebody who I've actually heard of before, and they're trying Stellaris. I bet you wouldn't see that with like Europa Universalis. So. An advanced AI will aid science officers in their task to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no Blorg has gone before. The science ships will be able to explore the galaxy with the help of an AI. Really? I don't know. I tend, at least anecdotally, I have definitely found that this is the game. Like, if somebody's going to play, if somebody's going to get into Paradox games, like Stellaris is basically the one that seems to have gotten them into it. For me, it was Crusader Kings 2, so it was like a step away from Victoria 2 and the earlier ones, and a little bit closer to what Stellaris would eventually become. But again, like, I'm gonna sort of be marked from my own experiences. It may be that I just happen to have a group of people who are always going to be disposed towards playing this kind of a game, and it just happens to be Stellaris is the one that they got into. Okay, yeah, fair enough. Like, I don't think Stellaris is going to be like Stellaris is not going to be like a new Mass Effect release or something like that. I think Paradox had ambitions of getting to that level at some point. I really think for them, the Vampire the Masquerade game was going to be their effort to kind of like step foot on a sort of higher plateau of of quality and I don't know, like effort. But obviously that has undergone something of a troubled development, so we'll see whether or not that, it might be that they decide that they want to stick to their knitting and sort of focus more on their focus more on sort of their strategy titles, their core titles. PDX and BioWare presents Stellar Effect. There's got to be a mod that has that already. If not, I'm pretty sure there will be one. Actually, this is one small regret I had. I did want to try and do a mod for Stellaris. I was thinking of trying to stream it. And unfortunately, so they put out a bunch of dev diaries about how the modding tools work, but they didn't maintain them. So modding is very different than how they originally presented it, and I don't know if there's any really good guides for getting into it. Like, I can sort of parse out what the files say, but I had very ambitious plans for that mod, so that's sort of on hold. And yeah, actually, Malator, I'm a bad Paradox gamer. I know their big thing is like mods for everything, and they're really good ones. So there's like Kaiserreich for EU4. There's a fantasy one which I can never pronounce for HOI4 has Kaiserreich. This fantasy one for EU4. There's the really famous Game of Thrones mod for CK2. But yeah, I actually don't have any mods for this. I can see myself trying some mods, but I'm not locked into it yet. You'd try Stellaris that made it more like Star Trek? Yeah, I think this is the big one, is that I think there's two ways of appreciating Stellaris as a sci-fi fan. You've got one path where you say, I'm going to do my own version of this sci-fi idea that I really like. So, I want to make the Starship Troopers universe in Stellaris. And then you'll go and, you'll pick like militarist and dictatorship and whatnot. And then you have the other path, which says, I would like to So that's again the view I kind of have of Stellaris, which is this nice canvas on which you can paint your science fiction stories. But modding allows you to say, it's like, what actually we want to do is we want the Warhammer 40K, grand strategy game that we never got, and the ships are turned into like these citadel-looking things, and they. I mean, one of the things that's interesting about a lot of these mods is that they seem to impose a lot of restrictions on how the game works. That doesn't mean they don't add things as well, but in order to basically line it up with a particular science fiction world, it does seem that they impose a little more structure than is necessarily on the base game. And again, it depends on the fantasy that you want, a little bit like any game, right? If you really like the fantasy of sort of playing a Star Wars grand strategy game that isn't Rebellion. And I'm not talking about the board game. I'm talking about like the one that you can play on EA Play. You can do that with modding. In theory, again, you assume that somebody's made the mod. But on the other hand, if you like the idea of it being science fiction as a concept or a genre, obviously imposing restrictions on your world is a little bit counter to that idea. So I can kind of see it both going both ways. Starship Troopers would be kind of lame universe, bugs everywhere, kind of lazy, only a few human worlds. Warhammer 40K would be cool, but Chaos would be hard to mod. Yeah, I mean it's a little. I think with anyone like you're probably going to wind up abstracting away certain ideas. So, but then that's true for just about any game. I think a lot of like to me the question for a good mod has always been like what is the way that you get the feelings that you have of a work that you enjoy, and how is that realized inside of the gameplay? So a great example would be there's a bunch of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy references inside of Stellaris, and those are great. Would you be able to do a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy total conversion? There's definitely some things that you can do for that. So, for instance, there's a lot of seemingly random chance that winds up actually being connected in the background. So, if you think of that chart that I showed you, you can imagine a very similar chart plotting all of the different relationships between events that you eventually sort of unravel the mysteries. On the other hand, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is also a very individual-focused story. It's Arthur Dent seeing the galaxy for what it is the first time, and so the question is can you tell a very individual story in a galaxy-wide in a galaxy-wide setting? Clearly with the addition of the Galactic Council, you actually can come up with a very interesting approximation for Zaphod Beeblebrox's role. But again, like to a certain extent, you would almost imagine wanting to have a set of CK2 level RPG elements inside of it to really be able to capture what makes Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy really fun to read. And so the question would be, would a prospective modder be able to capture the things that make that particular book series so interesting? Other than its humor, of course, because humor you can incorporate. Or would it be something where you just say that, this isn't quite appropriate for what this game will allow me to do? Yeah, build up so you can make Magrathea. Oh, that's an interesting question. Can you? I guess you can make systems, but I think systems are like pre-generated inside of the game. So I guess you'd have to like just have a whole bunch of like hidden systems in the background. I don't know. I'd have to look into that. And Delph says, PC PDX games, specifically the later ones, is like a base dough of a pizza. You can add toppings to it, make it what you like. Yeah, and to me, I actually have a really hard time discerning like the worthwhile mods. Sometimes I run into the problem where I will download a couple of mods that I just don't think are very good. Like they clearly don't have the level of polish that that the developer puts in, and I tend to get turned off pretty easily. But it's a shame, right? Because modding has been such a huge thing in gaming for seemingly forever, and I know that there's a lot of stuff that I'm missing out on as a result. Finally reaching the bottom of the dig, the cause of the anomaly reading was unveiled. An old tomb, likely to be the burial ground of some alien ruler. There wasn't enough time to investigate further. Moments after entering the mausoleum, some ancient but powerful trap activated. It triggered a local earthquake, making the shaft quickly lose structural integrity and start to collapse. Narrowly, fatal damage to the expedition was avoided, but the shaft is once more full of loose rocks and boulders. Let dead kings lie. Well, at least we didn't wake up the Necrons or something. I keep forgetting to unpause the game. Sorry. As you can see, it's been a chattier night tonight. Small rectangular object on the surface of the planet is deflecting all scanning beams like a mirror. Our sensors are unable to determine its material composition.
Technology conceived.
Well, what you got to do, you either do a species entirely of horses or a species entirely of relatives. New fracking techniques will allow us to tap into previously unattainable pockets of geothermal resources deep beneath the planet's crust. So hopefully that'll boost my... Well, obviously it'll boost my mineral output, but hopefully that will make sure that we keep competitive. I think I'll do the ceramo metal armor because it is the most readily accessible. Sadly, we don't have a researcher to help with that, though.
Our construction is complete.
Ah, come on. A particularly observant operative in the Armanthi Trading Coalition has laid their tentacles on part of an Armanthian encryption key. It would seem a careless Armanthi administrator mislaid the device whilst commuting. This bodes well enough for our operations in the Armanthi Trading Coalition, but our study of the device's unique design has revealed novel insights for our general approach to code breaking. So we've gained 2 years of code breaking. All tasks for the Black Codex are pedestrian. Alien mural. While conducting surface scans of Subterraneous 2, Science Officer Yathog Unrove and the crew of the Hateful Bow Chaser discovered what appears to be an artificially carved slab of rock covered in alien writing. They've not detected any other signs of alien activity on the planet, and exactly how this mural came to be is a mystery. We have prepared a special project to translate the text. Alright, what's that going to cost me? Not this one. Oh. So this is one where I do control... Actually, tell you what. Let's wait for the 2 colonizable planets to be searched. And then I'm going to do the... For those of you that don't know, if you do Control-Shift, it will put something at the top of the queue. Slavery guilds. If you have slaves, how come it still enslaves your main race? Sorry, I think I misunderstand, Malator. Could you unpack that a little bit? I think I'm not following. Oh wait, I think you get the idea. So like you're saying that you have like your main race, and you have sub-races, and you want to know why there are people of, like, the master race in bondage. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. Like, I've always taken that as the species is okay with the concept of slavery, and so either, you can justify it all sorts of ways. Well, okay, let me be clear. There is no justification for slavery, but within the context of the game... you would justify it either through, debt service or, punishment for crimes. But I think if you go isn't it the case if you go under species? You can set... Wait, you can set rates, but they still wind up as... individuals can still wind up as slaves. I forgot about that. Yeah, you're right. I guess there isn't a way of preventing the master species from being... Ancient war tribes, historical nations in conflict, now unified in empire. We must not, will not crumble. Administrative cap sounds kind of nice, but we've done an okay job of keeping that under control. So let's try and get something cheap. I'll do subterranean colonization. You always buy slaves of your species from other empires. Just yeah, I do the same, Delves. And Malator says you're rather afraid to hit the button to see what happens in your primary. Yeah, it's mostly just trying to get. So there's been a rather unfortunate tendency inside of some of the some of the Paradox games, which is that like. And, you know, if some of my older Crusader Kings videos really embraced the this game is making a terrible person ethos. And, you know, it's obviously intended all in good fun, but unfortunately what's happened is that there has been sort of this tendency for people to, like, revel a little too much in the, you know, in some of the ideas. And so... Also on streaming, I noticed that there's a little disclaimer on Paradox just saying is like, you know, it's important to be really clear, you know, what you're saying is okay. So, you know, like, for instance, I think probably once upon a time in Crusader Kings 2, you know, I think I probably would have said something equivalent to it's like, and of course we declare war on them because they have the wrong religion. And I would maybe be a little bit more conscious of that today, because obviously there is a type of YouTuber and streamer that is going to be saying, you know, they're saying something, but just kind of let it slide under the, you know, the lines of acceptable conduct on Twitch or YouTube. And so, you know, in that case, you know, saying, you know, within the context of the game, you know, because I am a, you know, because I want their land, I'm going to use whatever. So, yeah, it's just one of these things. I mean, again, like, it sucks. It would be nice if we could assume good faith on the part of everyone. But, you know, I think it's also, like, I'll just put it to you this way. I think it would be really, really nice if I can be a fan of Paradox games and not have to deal with the assumption that I harbor some pretty odious beliefs. And so I'm totally fine delineating, you know, do I think anybody in chat here would be confused about, you know, what I mean when I say, you know, your justification for slavery? No, because we're talking about a science fiction universe, but it helps to get in the habit of making sure that you're clear in what you're saying. I didn't get in trouble. But it's so here's the thing, right? Like, Paradox has a World War II game, and it's a game in which you can play Germany. I've played Hearts of Iron 4 on stream on a couple of occasions, and I was playing Germany, and somebody immediately started talking about the Rothschilds, and it was really clear what they meant. Like, for me, that's easy. That's an insta-ban. That's not even a warning. But, like, you know, that's the problem, right? Is because of people like that, it means that you also kind of want to be careful that you're not sort of putting up the little flag that you're quote-unquote cool, and all of a sudden your chat really sucks because you've got people talking about, you know, more contemporary real-world stuff, so... You know, again, it's I try to be I try not to be like completely putting all of the padding around the rooms, but you know, again, just taking a moment to just check in and make sure that I'm being clear in terms of what I'm saying. I think is a reasonable enough. I think it's a reasonable enough trade-off because again, you don't know who's watching. Cloned organs. The cloning vats mass-produce the more frequently consumed organs like hearts and lungs, increasing the usable lifespan of high-priority drones. The other thing, too, right, is, like, I'm reasonably confident in my ability to, like, make the joke through other means that I don't, like, really feel... Like, I don't really feel the need to... Actually, speaking of heretical and unauthorized concepts, I completely forgot if I set my stream as... I might still have it as mature audiences only. Oh, hey, you all can see what's going on here. Sorry about that.
Our special project is complete.
That's Tom Francis's YouTube tutorial, by the way. Tom Francis is the guy who did Gunpoint and Heat Signature, among many other games. I have not seen his tutorial, but I'm kind of intrigued because I know he's not primarily a programmer. Anyway, sorry, I just want to make sure that I'm not tagged as mature, so... Listen, you gotta have your two separate browsers, right? Sorry, I'm so bad at... Oh god, I'm set up for mature content. Sorry about that. All right. Stop. There we go. You're so lucky you had all your inappropriate... I actually... The most inappropriate stuff that I have is usually, like, unusually nerdy papers open. I realize that makes me sound very tame, but I actually tend not to see too many, you know, too many bad things online. Preach freedom in the streets, conquer Xenos in the sheets. Yeah, sorry about that though. I thought I got rid of the overlay, and clearly I didn't. Paradox multiplayer streams have had some great Evil Empire descriptions in the past. Oh, that's neat. I really do need to check out some more of the multiplayer stuff. Science officer Yuthag Unrove has managed to partially translate the alien mural discovered on Subterraneous 2. It is a memorial to an extinct alien race that once maintained a small interstellar empire in this region of the galaxy. They were apparently exterminated by the creation of the mural, a fact that they seem to regret. Given that the mural has been dated to be in excess of 300 million years old, it is likely its creators are also extinct by now. Perhaps most interesting of all is that the material the mural was made of, despite its age, is in remarkably good condition. 200 experience, 631 engineering. Happy to get that. So I do have a little bit of a trade-off as far as my alloys are concerned. So I'm a bit constrained in terms of minerals. I need energy. I don't think I have anything I can spend the influence. Oh, nope. Oh, but this is food. Drat. Okay. Yeah, I think we're just gonna have to eat it for influence. We'll do learning campaign. I don't see any reason to do the war drone campaign right now. I believe it will, Malator. So if I recall correctly, oh, I messed it up. Well, actually, here's the easiest way I can do that. Well, we'll test it right now. So I'll do survey. Sorry, specifically survey this world. And then we will tell it to the system. So my view is that this is just something that winds up in the queue, right? And then what I'll do is I'm actually going to put a third thing in the queue. So I know this isn't exactly what you're asking, but this is a quick test that I'm going to run just to make sure that it goes in. Okay. Yeah, I guess we're testing beside each other. So my view is that they should be going to assist with the research, and they basically just get, that's like an absorbing state. Now, I don't want them to be assisting, so yeah. So it definitely added it to the queue. So the fact that it's in the queue tells me that that should work. And then the other test, of course, would be to go control. Oh, interesting. So I just did control shift on the assist research, and it's actually completing the survey. So I'm guessing that they recognize that, or I just messed it up.
We have found an anomaly.
Somewhere beneath Elithor 3's unctuous clouds, unnatural structures silhouette themselves against the toxic surface. So it's hard, but we'll research it. Okay, yeah. So the one thing it won't do is it won't put assist research to the top of the queue, probably because it sort of takes up everything else. Anyways, what I want to do here is, excuse me, queue them up for.
Our construction is complete.
He didn't go back? Oh, that's a shame. Are you sure it's not control shift? Because I always do control shift. Atmospheric readings from Elithor 1 do not match simulated projections. Somewhere beneath Elithor 3's unctuous clouds, unnatural structure. Oh, hang on. That was... Yeah, I mean, we can test that too, so... let's say, okay, so I say we're going to survey this system, then this one, then this one, then this one, then this one. So that was shift for me. I was like, oh, hang on, I forgot I wanted to do Mestros. And now we're back to doing Mestros. Yeah, that's an odd one. Or actually, no, I think I probably get what's happening. It's because there's technically no end to assisting research, so you have to cancel the action in order to go out and do it. Oh, crap. I didn't pay attention. Energy. DM. Do we really need the food right now, though? Oh, we need the housing. So. Should have audited my jobs. So minerals are an input for... Okay, well, one thing I don't have is alloy manufacturing. So the question is Wasset... I don't really think Wasset is the place for... Yeah, okay, so because the resources aren't as good, maybe I should just make this a little bit more oriented towards, I don't know, something else? Either way, we gotta wait for the minerals, but that's a shame. Well, in this particular case for me, I just didn't pay attention to enough stuff. I do tend to I found in the last one, because of my lack of attention to administration, I really did need to like push people to certain jobs. But in this case here, it's just I didn't lay enough groundwork. So essentially here I've got 5 planets, but I'm only generating 39 minerals a turn. And so essentially I just have not had enough resources to be able to put the infrastructure in place to be able to, meaningfully employ all of my drones. It'll be something that sort of resolves itself in a little bit, but that's really what's driving that here. All right, Index Gnome, good luck with whatever's sending you off. Thank you for stopping by. guess I play a rumba style measuring 0021 modifiers. Yeah, I think it's a little. I'm definitely very. I'm very picky with a lot of the stuff that I do in this game, so that does tend to translate to me spending a lot of time looking at very trivial things. But I don't know. I do get a weird enjoyment out of it. Ah, solar panel network. Okay, that's very welcome. I wonder why I don't have that on other species, or maybe that just got added. I didn't realize it. So I think basically more shoot the better for this one. We will eventually build defenses, but not much gonna happen there. DM, I should have done. Oh, let's wait on the upgrade then. Oh, that's right. Solar panel. Okay, yes, that's a hive mind thing. Not just an important tool as a gamer. I have run into more than a few game designers that basically consider Excel to be their, their most important tool. Yep, like Excel. There's actually, if I recall correctly, I know I was talking about this last time on stream. I believe Tyler Sigmund, who worked on The Darkest Dungeon, one of the co-founders of Red Hook, I believe is very particular about it being Excel and not like Google Sheets or something like that. There's signs of activity by an ancient precursor civilization on this asteroid. It'll take forever, but I'll do it. It's less severe that we're spending time on those because we've got 2 science ships taking care of the same part of the galaxy. Captain Zerge, we're up against a very strong neighbor again, and I want to know why the hell the AI is so good at expanding. But assuming that we don't get completely crushed, we should be okay. What a completely useless statement. Of course, if we don't get completely crushed, we'll be okay. I do want to keep an eye on my food. All right, a combination of different metals and ceramics that result in a strong armor without sacrificing flexibility. We will apply that, but I need to be patient. Starhold kind of seems to be my best bet here. The more defenses I can set up in Menshib, the better off I am. Yeah, and I don't think we know enough about their systems to be able to say. Yeah, one way or the other. So that doesn't seem like they were an advanced start, like just based on the score difference. But ships-wise, like I have no idea how they're supporting this kind of a navy. Obviously, I need to get my bases online and some anchorages down, but even then, like that's a pretty wild collection. So we're building up DMs, so that's going to be fine. Oh, wow. Actually, we're already at our cap. So I was going to do an upgrade at Bira just to make it a real nightmare to try and get anywhere inside of my territory. But given that I probably want to take the Raprick system for myself, I definitely want to put a base there just so I can defend myself.
Technology conceived.
Okay, capacity, subsidies, and energy grid. Load balancing facilities can greatly improve the stability of local grids and feed excess power back into centralized capacitors. Grinding lattice. Elithor 3 is crisscrossed by overlapping mineral composite bands that are elevated above the harsh surface by tall, flexible pylons, constantly agitated by atmospheric winds. These pylons sway, and the overlapping bands rub together to produce sonic waves at what are, to fear, inaudible frequencies. Science officer Serg Windward reports some difficulty in isolating this audio from natural background noise of the planet, but notes that the mineral bands could, should we so choose, be broken down and efficiently recycled by the fear. Make preparations for salvaging the mineral bands. I think I should probably, as much as I want the research station output, I think I got to put the points into the blue laser. They nerfed commercial zones. Yeah, I used to really like commercial zones, but then I noticed with the new system on, like, in terms of where you put the, like, the specialist districts and such, I have been able to find gainful employment for most of my people, so that I don't really need it. I'm gonna take a flyer and build another energy district, but I do need to be careful about my food stores. So we got 3 jobs available there. Man, this planet's really good for everything.
Our construction is complete.
So 7, 8. We still have enough left over for specialist districts. So yeah, I'm going to build farms there. So I guess the question is, how quickly do I want to put the solar panels down? Pretty quickly, I would think, because like I'm not really going to be able to afford anything else. Swirling shadows, immense ragged plains of shadow drift across Elthor 1's face. They are cast not by clouds, but by sheets of organic material drifting through the upper layers of the atmosphere, hinged, or rather jointed, to allow for a small degree of articulation. Science Officer Serg Windward is as yet unwilling to say whether these things are flora or fauna, or what possible purpose, if any, their elaborate shadow casting might serve.
Our construction is complete.
So hopefully that should get us back on a pretty good fiscal path. I do need to focus, well, not exactly focus, but I do need to improve my alloy production. But I kind of need to focus on everything. Like, we're doing okay for minerals now. That's really just relative to everything else. Food is obviously going to be a huge problem for me down the road. So I'd love to do capacity subsidies, if anything, just so that I can use the influence, but I know if I go over the edict capacity, then I get hit by Empire Sprawl, and that is no good. Yeah, needless to say, I am surprised and sometimes happy that the AI decides not to crush you like a bug when you can. I'm a little tempted to try and go for the asset here.
We have surveyed the system.
Through hard work and experience, scientist Serg Windward has developed new skills. I think we should get a little more of a nest egg before I consider it, but... I'll also build some anchorages when the time comes. I'd love to put some like some offensive capabilities, so like a missile launcher or something on these other worlds, but I'm sort of limited. And I think anchorages. So the thing is like, you know, if you build a defensive system, it's going to help you in that system. If you build a if you build an anchorage, then you have mobile offensive capacity, and clearly that's gonna give you a little more to work with. We don't have the bonus. You always prefer the strongholds? Oh, so like building them on the planet. Yeah, that was an interesting one. So I almost never build them. Although I do know that they give you, so for those, just so I try not to keep it too limited to people who are in the know. So basically, if you build a stronghold on a planet, this is actually a great change that they put in, I think it was 3 or 4 patches ago. But basically, one of the problems that Stellaris ran into is the fact that navies rule and armies are almost like an afterthought. Really? Huh. I thought this was specifically added because of the issue that, like, armies don't really do anything. Like, you can take over planets with them, but, like, it's not nearly as interesting in the navies. I seem to remember... Okay, I must be thinking of something different. Yeah, anyway, so strongholds don't just give you defensive armies. I thought there was a while when all that they did was make the planet harder to invade. At the very least, they added a tooltip to specifically say that your naval capacity will go up if you add the stronghold building. Problem for me is that because I'm looking for more resources, I tend to find giving up the building slot is sometimes a tough pill to swallow. I usually wind up having at least one on each planet in the end, but I don't know. I've tended to like anchorages, particularly because you can do dedicated anchorage bases, and then you have the building that will multiply the benefit. We've made first contact with mysterious aliens in this Sidor system. We should find out more about them so that we may decide whether they would be suitable nutrition for our drones. For now, they have been given the designation Theta aliens. Mushrooms. Oh, this is a curator. Oh, I guess this must have been the sinkholes tech. Anyways, eco simulation. I need food. Delves, you got work tomorrow, so you got to go. Awesome to be here live for a while. Thank you very much for hanging out. I know, I know you've been watching on YouTube, so probably made a little less, maybe not as little as, it's not like I make tons of progress on other sessions as well. Probably made a little bit less progress than you might be accustomed to, but I really appreciate you hanging out, and not just hanging out, but participating in chat. I know that's not for everyone, but it's fun to get people's impressions of these games, and I don't know what keeps them coming back to them. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you around, and I hope I get a chance to entertain you live again. I'll maybe just caution you guys, I'd love to go longer, but I do need to kind of be mindful of my own limits. I actually also have some work that I wanted to get through tonight, so I'm probably around for another half hour myself, but we will enjoy the time together. And of course, anything that we don't get to finish tonight, we will, if you just want Stellaris, we'll have that in a week. And for those of you just like the sound of my voice, Caius is coming back tomorrow. I actually recorded one of those this morning. That was a mistake. The administrative cap sure would help here. Against my better judgment, I'm going to do this, but I better have a good plan for getting the food that I'll need to support it. For those of you that do not know that strange voice that I just did, that is the ongoing Elder Scrolls playthrough that I've been doing. So far I've done Arena up to Oblivion. I guess I can't say that I haven't done Skyrim, because I was talking about how I bounced off of it. But yeah, I'm currently enjoying Oblivion, having played the same Dark Elf from the very first one. You're sure there's a way to see who has what claimed on what sector, but you can't find it at the moment. I think it'll give you a list. Let me just take a quick... I know we don't have any claims in this playthrough right now, but I should be able to point you to something. Bulwark of Harmony. All organisms, no matter how perfect, must rely on immune systems to ward off the threat of outside disease. Our society is no different. Wanted a defensive war with another empire. Ship build speed is increased by 33%. In addition, ship fire rate is increased by 15% for ships within your borders. This is actually pretty good for me right now. I definitely didn't intend for it to work this way. But given the fact that we are currently the one at risk if they come after us, this will give us a little bit of a boost. It won't be enough to hold them off, but I'm going to take every little bit that I can take against these guys. So my usual temptation is to do one vision for the extra unity. Mastery of Nature would be kind of nice for two reasons. Not just the inexpensive clear blocker, but the embiggening of the planets. I feel like these are the two obvious choices for me right now. So I guess the question is, do I really value a 10% boost to my existing unity? That's, I mean, 7 a turn is not nothing. Let me, but if we're looking at like 3681, it's like, I mean, I guess the other calculation I could have done was just what's 10% of the, like, is shaving off 5 months on a tradition upgrade really, like, on a scale of 50 months, is 5 months really going to be the sort of thing where... No, I've answered my own question. The money that I save clearing my blockers is clearly worth more than the 5 months I'm going to save off of my traditions. Actually, sorry, I just saw something on Discord. I just got a bunch of messages coming in. Right, sorry about that. There was one semi-urgent thing I just wanted to let someone know that everything was okay. It's just one of those ones where, like, you can send a message later, but the nice thing to do is to let someone know right away. So my mild hope is that we find a slightly weak neighboring species so that we can eat them and leverage that into an advantage against this trading coalition. I don't think that's going to happen. I think I'm probably just going to have to brute force it, but we'll work with what we've been given. We picked up readings of unknown nature. The signals seem to follow some kind of repeating syntax, which could indicate sapient origin. It should be investigated further. They seem to be concentrated around a single space station, though it is unclear whether this forms part of a larger spacefaring civilization. Again, we already know that it's one of these... so I can't remember the proper names for them. It's not curator, it's... enclaves, I think? Anyway. We know what it is. Our species just needs to know what it is. Not a fallen empire. Like the trading or the curator or the art Kickstarter. I'm pretty sure they're called enclaves. In fact, that's what the wiki's for. Only not. Oh, really? You... Why doesn't the built-in help go back to the thing that comes up at the start? I think this is a big mistake in the wiki. This should go back to the Paradox wikis menu, not the Paradox site. Anyways, yeah. I'm like 99% sure it's called an enclave.
Our construction is complete.
Yeah, neutral NPC spawn factions. Oh yeah. No, this is the first time since I think Synthetic Dawn that I've played a hive mind, so I completely don't know what's going on. But I usually take advantage of them. I think if you build a starbase around them, under most circumstances, you're able to get a bonus. Like you can build a research component alongside the research-oriented one, such.
Our construction is complete.
After successfully translating their language, we have established communication with the independent space station known as the Mutagen Merchant Guild. Yeah, I mean, I think Paradox could be a little bit nicer in the way that they handle it. I'm a little less worried about it in browser because obviously I'm already in the Paradox environment here. There's already telemetry that's being, sent back home. Clearly, they are going to know way more than my browsing activity within the given browser here. But I can definitely understand some hesitation, accessing the wiki outside of the game. I'm also I'm not playing on a Mac, but I do most of my primary computation is done on Apple devices, so I'm actually kind of happy when they, when they finally launched the. I know they're not calling it a VPN, but whatever the proto VPN they're calling iCloud, and then I think the new Safari is supposed to have a whole bunch of stuff that's basically designed to make Facebook very sad. So I will feel a little bit better about using certain websites. Honestly, actually, the thing that I hate the most, just because I've been ranty tonight, there's more than a few websites that will... I mean, obviously it's mandated by the European Union, but, they'll give you the option, quote unquote. And they'll always have the same, phrasing, because we value your privacy, ... And then what do? They use the dark pattern where everything is opt-in and the easiest option to click is just accept everything without actually looking down and seeing what they're going for. And not only do you have to manually adjust it, you put the maximum amount of effort. And then on top of all of that, they ask you every single time you come in and you have to turn those things off. It's it does not need to be that way. It's the same way that my phone company, every time I use their app, it asks, are you okay, enabling a tracking so that we can improve the quality of service? No, I hate you. I do not want to do anything to make your business better. Now, if I say yes, I'm never going to see another menu asking, are you okay with us, tracking usage patterns and, and locations where the phone is used? They're only ever going to ask me every login in hopes that one day I hit yes, and that becomes a permanent yes. So, I don't know, sure, give people the option. I understand that these things are very useful. I mean, I work with data, right? I know how useful it is to have this stuff available. And there's lots of very innocuous ways that this sort of stuff can be used, in ways that specifically make things better, either will improve the quality of the product or will, give people information about something that they might have otherwise missed. I'm definitely not super never on my machine, but any goodwill that I have for a company immediately goes out the window as soon as I see an opt-in screen that uses any of those dark patterns. There's just no need for it. it goes from it being, we all live under the GDPR now. People are worried about this, rightly worried about it. I think it's good that legislation exists. So it might mean that I see a few more windows saying, "Are you okay with these cookies?" Which probably I should have been asked about in the first place. But it ceases to be just, we're dealing with regulatory obligations, and is much more about specifically them trying to get something from me. The second that they move from that to, we are specifically structuring the way that we're asking you to maximize the amount of information that you give us. And at that point, it's just like, okay, well, I know where your priorities lie, and they're definitely not with mine. So your favorites are when they make you do that, and then you get to the end and it says, "We see you chose to deny some cookies. You cannot access our website unless you subscribe." Yep, Bloomberg, I think, does that a lot. There are a couple of ways around that one for Bloomberg, at least, but and to a certain extent, like, I get it. Like, to me, so this is just a slightly more sophisticated trade-off in terms of, like, getting the content in exchange for the advertising, right? So once upon a time, you would watch a TV show, and in order to get that TV show made, you would have to watch a bunch of consumer goods companies advertise their wares at you, and that was the trade-off. Or, if you wanted to read a newspaper, there's a certain amount you'd pay for the newspaper, and then the rest of the cost was subsidized by the fact that people would put ads in between the articles, and you'd cover it. So, to a certain extent here, they're saying is like, okay, well, we can't do some of the stuff that we used to rely on in order to get you, to make this worthwhile for us to provide. So we're going to ask you for the subscription, right? It's like, you can let us advertise to you effectively, or you can't, and we expect payment for our services. To a certain extent, I get it. I tend to express my preferences by not moving forward, especially because there's a second really odious thread, which is that obviously the most effective headlines now are 10 things that you won't believe, or, all of the different, basically the clickbait titles. And so the thing is that even for reputable publications like the New York Times or something, very often I will follow a headline only to discover that it bears only a very tangential relationship to the article, which, in a lot of cases I found, unfortunately, it's not very well researched, or it's at least a very, it is a very surface level reading of a given set. Now, that's not everything, and that's not limited to any one given publication. Like, people are writing on deadlines. Sometimes there's only so much information available. But the thing is that if you've done one thing to bring in people to your site, which is to produce these headlines which are very good at bringing people in, but not necessarily leaving them fulfilled after they read the content, it's going to make me immediately suspicious of the contract, which is, I'm going to give you either some information in the form of cookies or my money in terms of a subscription in order to read your article. It's a little bit like, research articles. So I'm lucky enough that I have access to a bunch of academic publications through my work. If I was outside of, a place that has paid for those subscriptions, I would need to pay per article, or, go to the researcher's website and just see if they did an early print on their list of publications. But again, an abstract doesn't necessarily tell you whether or not they actually sold you on the idea, and so again, you potentially wind up giving up something of value to you for something that 10 seconds of research wouldn't could have told you that it wasn't worthwhile. So you see on some of those sites, you just gave up on this. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not entirely convinced. So I think before Amazon, Twitch was not necessarily in line with its viewers or its broadcasters. Maybe its biggest broadcasters. But definitely, it's very easy to see that when they are a subsidiary of the largest provider of cloud services, and you still have people who are struggling to get transcode, something that's given by default on YouTube, a much larger site with, a larger sort of ingestion of videos, it's very clear that they are, they're following their own priorities, right? They're trying to maximize their returns. I know this is a little bit different from what you're talking, but again, it's like it's definitely easy to say. It's like these people are not necessarily your friends. So, after successfully translating their language, we have established communication with the independent space station at Mutagen Merchant Guild. Oh, it's not a mushroom. All right. Well met, friends. I represent the Mutagen Merchant Guild, and let me be the first to welcome you to the Sidor system. Our organization consists of hundreds of independent mutagen merchant captains who brave the spaceways in search of the next good deal. At our facilities, you'll be able to trade away some of your excess resources. Please contact us if you are interested in such an arrangement. Pray. They're pre-cooked, too. But yeah, I try to be somewhat even-handed about it. Like, I get that in some cases,
our construction is complete.
As a consumer, I obviously want everything to be free, and I want it to, be 10 times better than what it already is. But even, little things for me, like the fact that Twitch obviously wants me to run ads every 20 minutes, I think is a level of... I think that's a level of intrusion into the enjoyment of the broadcast that is quite different from what, what's consistent with other comparable forms of entertainment. I don't mind that they necessarily run ads. I am happy that I'm getting a fragment of them now, I think. But I really question that decision to make it so that you all have to see pre-roll ads, assuming you don't have an ad blocker, but I noticed that they're getting a little bit better at evading ad blockers too. But yeah, I'm not crazy about the fact that basically they want me to run ads every 20 minutes, because I just don't see how you form... imagine me trying to do one of these rants that I'm doing and having to wait every 20 minutes to finish the thought. There's just no way to have sort of sustained communication with people. I am the Devouring Swarm, yes. I'm a very patient Devouring Swarm, apparently, but... Yeah, I'm not going to be able to get anything from these guys. Fortunately, they're not immediately hostile either, so I can still potentially colonize the area, but... I knew that going... So when I say, it's... I don't want to say, new to me as in I don't know any of the mechanics for a Devouring Swarm. I sort of read everything. Usually when I make a species, the first hour of the stream is the construction of the species. So I kind of know what you're giving up in order to do a Devouring Swarm. But the particulars, so little things like, the solar panels and all of that are a little unfamiliar. And I was doing so good at avoiding food shortages. And then I screwed it up. Yeah, actually, Malator. So I used to really enjoy the Riff Tracks channel, and I didn't particularly mind advertising between the movies, but now that there's multiple ads while the movie's running, I just can't really enjoy it anymore. So I've actually stopped watching... I'll watch Riff Tracks in that I own them, but, It used to be that I'd be able to kind of convince people that like Rift Tracks was kind of fun and they should check it out by using that Twitch channel. And I obviously can't do that now because it's just like, you know, if you've got a pasta sauce commercial stepping on the jokes, you know, how are you going to convince somebody that it's actually really funny? You just have your computer and switch from whatever to whatever live stream or TV or movies when you want. Yeah, and I mean, it's, you know, to a certain, like, so for the news thing, one of the solutions for me is, again, like, I realize Apple isn't everyone's cup of tea, but like, I have that Apple One subscription now, right? So that means I get Apple News, Apple News Plus. So that, I think, gives me access to at least the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal. I don't think the New York Times is in it. Globe and Mail is in it. I can't remember if the National Post is for Canada. But National Post usually will, like, they don't put too much of their stuff behind a paywall yet. Although they do, man, one thing that's been really bad about the National Post lately is they have really fallen into that habit of advertising that is written as an article. And it is really, really hard to discern it. And like, it's usually, especially because like the National Post used to be the Financial Post, and the financial section of it is still the Financial Post. And so we're talking about things that are intended to be like, you know, economic or business analysis. And it's totally the company that's trying to sell you their services writing the copy. And it's presented as a, you know, it's presented as a, like a legitimate article. I know that's not, like, that's apparently a thing that's been going on in the US for a while. But again, it's just one of these ones where I'm like, well, do you want to keep me as a newspaper reader or not? Like, I do not have any interest in trying to discern, like, what is news and what is advertising from you. That's kind of your job. So, but yeah, it's like, you know, I'll admit I'm not crazy about the fact that Apple News does actually have like advertising in between the articles. I'm like, you know, I am paying for the Plus version of this, right? Like, presumably the Plus version does not entail advertising in most cases. But I don't know if that's an agreement with the, you know, with the news providers or whatever. I am happy that I have a means of being able to, you know, send money, admit it, you know, probably very small amounts, but, you know, there is a way in which I'm engaging with a publication that is actually providing me news that I read as opposed to headlines that I click. But you know, it's not an easy business to make money in, which is a shame. And unfortunately, it seems that a lot of the steps that they've been taking in order to stay afloat are ones that ultimately move them away from news. It is also worth saying, like, for those of you who are not Canadian, the National Post is definitely the more right wing of our sort of papers of record. So, you know, some people will say, you know, the National Post never did news. I'm not quite so partisan. I'm definitely not very conservative in my political beliefs. Apologies if that matters to you. But I try as much as I can not to completely paint, like, I'll evaluate the article on its merits as opposed to it being, it's like, oh, Conrad Black owns that one. That's, you know, obviously no good things are going to come out of it. Although, honestly, they need to stop giving Conrad Black op-eds. It's embarrassing. A small short-range transmitter that has been located on... Oh, yeah, actually, as a whole, I could really do without the opinion sections on most major newspapers. That is not a good place to go. There's something very embarrassing where paid writers are sort of being outdone in the quality game by podcasts when it comes to just the clarity of thought and the ability to present a convincing argument. Small short-range transmitter has been located on the surface of Bokramar 3. It appears to be an ancient survey marker placed here eons ago, but to mark a large deposit of precious metals. The miners it was meant for evidently never arrived, as the deposit is still here. Yeah, no, that's fair. Actually, Malator, I have actually had the experience of someone who's like, so what they did was they were a senator's assistant, so Canadian senator, not an American senator. And they tried to pull the whole, like, technology. If only you knew what I know, you would vote the way I do. And, like, we'd worked on a political campaign before, which was not for a conservative politician, but I think they knew the one person. And, like, I just told them, I was like, that is, like, no, you don't get to do that. That might work on other people, but no, I'm not even going to entertain for a second that you tried to pull that on me. I said, is like, if you know so much, right, without giving away state secrets that you, the intern for the conservative senator, apparently were privy to, what was your security clearance again? I wasn't that mean about it, but, if you are going to, basically the case I try to make to them is like, we are in a democracy. The case needs to be made to me, the voter, that you will be, a good steward of the ship of state. And if all that you can say is, if only you knew what I knew, you would vote for me, then you have failed in that first duty, which is your ability to respond and be accountable to me. And I have no interest whatsoever in, granting my vote to somebody who can't pass that very minimal bar. Give me a vision of the country that you believe in, and I will consider it. Give me the secret code. If only you had the handshake, I could tell you. Then I think you're trying to get away with something. In fairness, her party did win that next election, so I was fighting against the tide there, but I still think, I think it holds. I often think that one of the big problems that a lot of political parties run into is that they tend to read their own headlines a little bit too much, and they often I totally get that governance is very hard. It's a bunch of people who constantly tell you that they hate you. It's actually why Crusader Kings is kind of fun, right? Because you actually get to see all of the factions. And Stellaris has it to a certain extent, too, when you don't play like what I'm playing. You have the different factions, and if you manage them well, you get nice bonuses to influence. And if you don't manage them well, then you're in trouble.
Technology conceived.
But farming techniques can be further refined through sophisticated computer simulations of different environments and weather patterns. This allows for more predictable crop yields. I think Naval Logistics Office is going to help me here because I get that multiplier for all of the, well, not multiplier, but I get +2 for each of the naval or anchorages that I build. But yeah, I don't know, like the practicalities of day to day, I think sometimes do get in the way, and they lose that vision. Like, this is one thing that kind of depresses me about the current Canadian election, is that there was not even a chance that I was going to hear anything about like a Canada's position in the world kind of a statement from our major political parties. People will try and make hay about Afghanistan, which obviously Canada was involved in. There's some token comments on the detention of 2 citizens in China in retaliation for our arresting Meng Wanzhou at the request of the United States for extradition. But the thing is that I don't think we're a very serious people. Like, I just think that we've largely gotten the politicians that we deserve because we don't really care about this stuff. We don't listen to it that much unless there is a point to be scored. And so in the end, if people are trying to, get our vote, and we haven't held them to account, essentially they're just responding to the incentives that we've given them. But of course, this is, most of the time whenever I pick an elected representative, for me, one very large part of it is to try and get some measure of how they are going to behave on an issue on which I cannot be consulted, right? The stuff that matters is, like, so in Ontario, we had one leader who was ejected because of accusations of sexual misconduct. It might have actually been assault. And we wound up with a considerably more coarse politician. And then COVID happened. And we all of a sudden learned how important it is to have serious people in charge when important events happen. So yeah, that's kind of been my yardstick, which is to try and say, it's like, do I have some idea of how this person behaves when they are not able to poll me, right? I don't think we should be doing referendums on everything. If anything, we've learned that referenda can often result in some pretty crummy choices. But are we able to, do I have reason to believe that this person will behave in sort of my best interests and consistent with what I think good judgment in a difficult situation would be? And I'll be honest with you, that actually sometimes means disappointing me, because the important thing to remember is that a lot of politics now is about appealing to your base. And I say this having worked on political campaigns, like having, being able to make sure that your people are voting for you and that you are appealing to your people. A really important part of politics is just being able to recognize the fact that we are all in the same country together, and that you need to be able to navigate all of these competing interests in a way that one group is not constantly screwing the other one. And that involves that dirty word compromise. And unfortunately, again, a little bit like Stellaris, right? If you manage the factions well, some are not doing as well as others, but if you manage it well, you make more influence than if you just constantly give everything. You have to spend a lot of effort to suppress one particular group. And likewise, in terms of a country, like, what do I want? Well, I want the dictatorship of me, the same way that everybody else does. A good politician is actually able to find a meaningful step forward between these competing interests. But we very often tend to punish people for that because they, in the end, we have kind of this weird purity test now where it's like, well, they didn't vote that way I wanted on the obscure, Yukon mining regulation, so, I abandoned them. So, but yeah, it depends. Like, everybody's miserable. If you feel that I'm being cranky about this election, you have not seen my Snapchat messages. So I did get one "Are you okay?" message just because I was really, really angry after one of the debates. But let's finish up the asteroid listening post. I was actually, because I noticed I was at the 3-hour mark, I figured I'd just get one last rant out, and then we could call it. Oh yeah, the States is definitely. I mean, we definitely. Oh man, that's really sad that happened. It's so weird how stuff that is like emblematic for us going the wrong way, right? Oh yeah, glad my VO4. So tomorrow's a little bit unique. So my start time, it is a bit of a window from 7 to 8 normally. I try to do 7 as much as I can, but just the practicality of having a day job, and I actually, one of my job prospects did get back to me, so I am doing a programming test, which I'm scared to death by because I don't know what exactly that entails. But yeah, my usual start window is 7 to 8. The Tuesday videos are pre-recorded, so you can watch them on YouTube as well. They're actually higher quality, but I do hang around in the chat. So it is currently the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. I think I'm on like my 34th. 84 is the Cultist Simulator one. But it's basically it's me playing for the first time the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, and I do a weird
Dark Elf voice because I was playing one at the start, and it was a mistake to do that for 4 games.
But yeah. Yeah, Captain Zerge, I there's so much to say about it, and I'm trying to wrap up, but I just don't. I really wish I could understand why people can take these things that are like emblematic of you going down the wrong way, but because it's your side, right? It's your motives were righteous, that that it's okay. Like you get the exception to burn the books. You are actually on, you're on the right side of history because you were burning that specific book. And I don't know. But yeah, so if it's live cast, I try and tweet just before I go live, but usually between 7 and 8, and those, because they're pre-recorded, are a little bit easier to turn on at 7. I might walk away so I can make dinner while doing it, but generally I'll hang around and chat. And then my usual streaming days are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, although this Wednesday, I believe the local Game Dev Collective is getting together, so I will, if I stream, it will be earlier and shorter. Oh yeah, nope, I know about those too, Melitor. Yeah. Anyways, a small Urson military listening post has been built in a hollowed-out portion of the asteroid's interior. It is equipped with an array of powerful sensors that seem to be aimed towards neighboring systems. None of them are functional, and the asteroid appears to have been gone over and looted at least once by another party. So, if I recall correctly, the Ursons, yeah, they're our precursor. That is something we... Okay, actually, before I do that, because I have a very bad habit for not... That was the control shift, by the way. I have a really bad habit for not doing stuff at the start. I think we're going to call that here. As a wrap-up, I am disappointed that our neighbor is so strong. We are a little lucky in the sense that our espionage... So they have difficulties dealing with us, but we're generally okay with them. I'm actually going to acquire an asset. So it's expensive, but I'm making some decent money now, so we'll launch that. Obviously, we'll lose a bunch of infiltration level, but I think the asset overall will raise that floor. So we have a clear idea in terms of where our borders are. We have been able to stay within parameters for our Empire Sprawl, and we actually got a little lucky as far as our food is concerned. The technology arrived right at the time that we could. I suspect, just taking a look at where we're at, given our anchorages, we probably have enough now to hold our own on future fights. But of course, one of the big things for us is we don't like fair fights. We like overwhelming force. Although one thing that is kind of nice for a war, it looks like we're able to basically eat their capital almost right away. Oh yeah, that reminds me actually. So... Oh right, I don't need to claim systems on this. And Malitor, you were asking about how do you know about claims. I think you can get a list if you mouse over on the the claims section in this menu here. I believe it will actually tell you, like if you mouse over your species, I'm pretty sure it will give you a list of claims that they have. It's not perfect, because if they have a really big list, it's you don't get to read the whole thing, but I believe that will... Yeah, I believe if I... Again, I'm going from a very fuzzy memory, but I believe if you're in diplomacy, you can mouse over. So, diplomacy, mouse over, there'll be like a claims button somewhere in here, and I think if you mouse over your icon, it will hopefully... if unless I'm totally out to lunch... I believe it will tell you at least some of the systems that it has claims on. But the problem is if it has lots of them, then it's a list, and so it will it'll elide some of the systems just for space. Don't take technical interviews personally. It's people asking you things that they've done twice their entire career that they barely remember and expect you to rattle off like you do every day. Sometimes you get really lucky and the guy asking the question is actually the one that has it wrong. Yeah, I did exactly... No claims showing up in there? Drat. Okay. There definitely was one place where I saw a list of claims. I could have sworn it was in the diplomacy tab, but if I find the answer between now and the next stream, I will be sure to mention it. But I feel like there was at least a way to see a small list. I'll have to think about it though. But yeah, Glem, I've done exactly one test before. It was character building, and it was embarrassing because it was on basic Python, which I know quite well. But definitely the context of an interview really threw me for a loop. I also couldn't import the SciPy stack, which definitely was surprising to me. I sort of kind of take that as like a given, so I had to think about how to do a bunch of matrix operations like as lists, and it was a little weird, but I don't know. Like, sometimes you just need to burn your hand on the stove, and you'll get better. Honestly, I don't have huge expectations for this interview, so anything extra just makes me happy. All right, I know I bled out a lot of viewers, and I'm sorry for that. I am actually going to raid Night Valian 28 tonight, so I normally like to send it off to another Stellaris stream, but I think I kind of already got the Stellaris diehards gone. If you do want to watch some more Stellaris, please do click the game down below. I'm sure there are some wonderful streamers who would love your attention. But I have shouted out Night Valian a few different times, and I haven't actually hosted him all that often lately. So he is currently playing Mega Man X4. He is a soft-voiced Brazilian, so for those of you looking to go to sleep, I'm sure he will fit the bill. For those of you who like my stuff, want to know what's going on, so tomorrow there will be another pre-recorded Elder Scrolls episode that runs for about 3 hours from around 7 to 10. For those who want to see me live, it is likely I will not stream on Wednesday. If I do, again, it will be earlier and it will be shorter, but I will be back for Friday. We'll probably mop up the last of Wolfenstein 2, and for those of you who just like Stellaris, I'll be back in a week. Thank you, everyone, for giving me, giving me the good feelings, the enjoyable chats, and just generally making this a really worthwhile stream of doing, because I was thinking of calling it because I wasn't feeling 100%, and I'm really glad I didn't. So have a lovely... Oh, wait a minute. I've got 10 seconds to do the host thing. I should have said all of that before. And yeah, Olaf, you especially, thank you very much for spending the time. I never want to take that for granted, and I always do appreciate the quiet support you give. All right, guys. Thank you. Have a good one. Please enjoy Night Valian.